I'll just give them another minute, and then we'll get this meeting rolling. And seeing that it's already 8:25, I will try my best to move this meeting as quickly as I can. So to those of you who want to speak, please come up and your name, your address, and limit your comments to 5 minutes. That would be greatly appreciated. All right, I get the nod, so if I could have the clerk call this meeting to order, that would be great. The roll call, please.
Ms. Barnes?
Here.
Mr. Bowersox?
Here.
Ms. Chenoweth?
Present.
Mr. Lewis?
Here.
Mr. Roberts?
Here.
Mr. Smythe? Ms. Stevenson?
Haven't left, present.
Mayor Pressing?
Here. Are there any additions to the agenda? There's an order, Jan. Go ahead, Brandon.
I would just suggest, if it's okay with you and the group, maybe putting item 7 before items 5 and 6. I think more of the audience is here to talk to item number 7, more so than items 5 and 6. If 7 could come first after public input, they might appreciate that, since they've already waited an hour and a half.
Do we need a motion for that, Ron? Okay. Okay.
All right.
Okay. Well, then, that will be 7, will now be the new 5. So, is there a staff report?
Well, I wanted to sort of give an overview, and then Liz Davis, I think, is here. Is Liz Davis here? Ah, she's there, sitting behind Lynn. To give you, we've been studying this. I want to thank Liz Davis and Kurt Borman, our assistant city attorney. They've done a lot of research on what other communities have done. And we've talked with Bill Gray, Jim Kelly, and Rod Fletcher of Public Works, and also Libby Tyler of Community Development. I'm at the point where I think rather than trying to pass some sort of an ordinance, we really do need a community-wide discussion of this. First of all, I think we need an education campaign. Many people are under the impression that if they try to clear their sidewalk and someone slips and falls, they're liable, whereas if they don't do anything, they're not liable. And in fact, the Illinois legislature changed that inequity, and they changed it back in 1979. But most people don't know that this law was changed. So what I'd like to do is have the city sort of take the lead on getting the discussion going. Urbana, first of all, is a very livable city. We're known as being a livable city. We have about 6 times the national average on people who walk to work. It's 17% instead of 2.9%. And I think the benefits of walking are well known, and one of our goals is to have the city be more pedestrian friendly, and snow and ice accumulation really do interfere with that, creating safety hazards which affect the elderly, school children, and people in wheelchairs. Last year, when we had the huge blizzard, I saw a man on Kirby Avenue in a wheelchair because the sidewalks were completely blocked, and he was right on the street competing with the cars. So I'd like to see an education campaign to talk about the law, talk about the benefits of walking, and then the city, I think, could encourage a good neighbor policy. In the past, people have had a custom of clearing sidewalks, and I think that was discouraged by this law, which has been changed, and also by people relying more and more on cars. The city has actually had people complain about not having a parking space close enough at Lincoln Square to their exercise class. So I think we should encourage people that maybe they could walk a little bit more. And perhaps we could set up a Good Samaritan Corps. I've got 3 volunteers so far. I'm one of them. Just got a snow. Okay, and well, we got 4 now. We got Danielle, and I just talked with Lynn Barnes earlier tonight, and she said that I think 4 families in her neighborhood got together and bought a snowblower together, and they share it. So I think there's all kinds of creative things that we could do. I believe we probably have a lot of equipment out there, and it's not worth it for someone to get all dressed up and get their snow blower out and then just do their own front of the sidewalk in front of their own house. So I'd like to set up a task force to take a look at this, because I think we come up with very good ordinances when we listen to all sides. And I would like representatives of neighborhood organizations, apartment complex managers, business owners, university students, persons with disabilities, Urbana schools, and the tenant union. And I've also listed some of the public concerns that people have relayed to me. They don't want to be required to shovel because they might get a heart attack. And we have never proposed that everybody be required to shovel by any means. I think we have some other technology that would be fitting. And at the end of this little memo to you, I have a copy of the state law, which it is declared to be state policy to encourage people to clean the sidewalks abutting their residences. And I'd like to introduce Liz Davis, in case you don't know Liz Davis. She's done a lot of the research on this, and she has, she'd like to share with you some of the things that she's found out.
Liz, before I give you the floor, could we get an approval of the minutes of the previous meeting, December 10th, 2007?
Second.
And then after Liz, the people that I have for public input, after Liz gives her presentation, I'll get to you guys. Thanks.
Let's vote on the minute.
Yeah, Lynn, did some, Charlie, and then Lynn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. All right, we'll go on. Liz, go ahead. Thank you.
And I'll try to speed through this because I know that we're running late. So if you have any questions, you do have another memo. It starts out with something like this. And there's a lot more information in that than what I'm going to talk about. But as the mayor said, the research that we did is to provide a framework for discussions that can occur later. There are just some issues that we may want to think about as we move forward on this issue, because as we were doing the research, we found what seems to be kind of a simple issue on its face. It becomes very complex, and there are lots of intricacies in that. So the first thing that we looked at was how much snow do we get every year? And on average, Urbana can expect to see about 2 feet of snow. And with each snow event, it only puts down about 1.4 inches. But as we learned last winter, we could have 2 snow events. One, we get a foot. The next one, we may get 2 inches. It's really hard to say. Another piece of information we also found out, though, is that according to the National Weather Service, Urbana has the distinction of being in an area that kind of attracts freezing rain or ice storms, really bad ice storms. So we're actually probably more prone to get ice storms than snowstorms. And this is a trend of the snow that we've seen in about the last decade. And as you can see, we've kind of been on a downward trend, but it varies significantly every year. So one year, we may not get very much snow at all. It might be kind of a dry year. We may get more rain than snow. But the next year, we could get a lot of snow. The next thing we looked at were transportation demographics and patterns. And as you can see, Urbana exceeds the state and national averages significantly, the state and national averages significantly, with people who use the bus and who walk. Over 10% of people use public transportation, and those are workers ages 16 years and older going to work. We have over 17% of our population who walks. And for the people who use the bus, a lot of people don't have the luxury of having a bus stop right out their front door, so they're probably either going to have to walk or use a bicycle to get to the bus in the first place. Kind of unusual, though, although we have all these people who are walking around Urbana, there's a decreased number of students who are walking to school. And a study by the Illinois Department of Transportation found that the number of students who walk to school has decreased significantly in the last 30 years. In 1969, about 42% of students walked to school. In 2001, that number was 16%. And so in response to that, in 2005, the state of Illinois passed the Safe Routes to Schools program, and that provides federal transportation funds to be used to encourage pedestrian activities for school-age children. The program is administered by the Illinois Department of Transportation, and it offers grants for infrastructure and non-engineering projects that encourages children to walk to school and to make the journey safer when they do. both Champaign and Urbana school districts, in cooperation with the Champaign County Regional Planning Commission, have applied for a grant for this program, and they're still waiting to see if they've gotten any awards for that. As part of the application process, a travel plan for Champaign and Urbana school students was developed, which identified potential barriers to children who wish to walk or bike to school. And in this plan, the lack of snow removal requirements was identified as a barrier to students walking or biking to school. Another thing we looked at is what Urbana does to encourage pedestrian activity. It seems like Urbana really wants to promote pedestrian activity, and this seems to be a major component of the 2005 comprehensive plan. There were a number of objectives in that plan that promoted pedestrian activity. As an example, Objective 46.1 was to work to improve pedestrian, bicycle, and transit access through Urbana. And Objective 47.7 was to promote bicycle and pedestrian access to major activity centers. And also in the future land use designations, a lot of those noted that they want to encourage pedestrian activity. And as an example of this, the central business designation, it states pedestrian, bicycle, and transit access are emphasized to ensure that areas are walkable. And then we looked at the economic impacts. Currently, the city removes about 3.5 miles of sidewalk, the snow that's on those sidewalks. Those are sidewalks that are adjacent to city properties. The city in all has about 65 miles of what's considered primary sidewalks and 89 miles of secondary sidewalks. And the Public Works Department has estimated that if the city were to expand that program, where the city would pay to remove the snow from those sidewalks, it would cost $1,000 per mile per snow event. And that's not including the personnel costs or the additional equipment costs. So the next aspect that we looked at, and these are detailed in your packets, are what do other Big Ten communities do? And they all have some sort of snow removal ordinance. However, not all of them choose to enforce it. Evanston, Illinois, for example, they don't enforce their ordinance at all. They have a very lengthy ordinance, but the person I spoke with said, we have it, we don't use it at all. And there are also some significant detail variations in it. Some, for instance, Ann Arbor, they differentiate between residential and commercial properties. There's a huge variation in how much time you have to remove the snow. Some say you have 24 hours, some give you a couple days. The amount of snow that triggers the ordinance, those differ significantly too. And this is just to put in perspective where we are. In those Big Ten communities, we're kind of at the lower end of the snowfall. The next thing we looked at are what we consider comparable communities. And these are communities within the state of Illinois that are similar in terms of population, demographics, and economic similarities. There are 11 of those. Out of those 11, 5 of them require sidewalk snow removal. And the 5 are listed there. It's DeKalb, Galesburg, Kankakee, Moline, and Normal. And we also looked at 2 others, Bloomington and Champaign, just because they're sort of twin cities to our comparable cities. Both of those do have some sort of sidewalk snow removal ordinance, although they are not citywide. They both designate the commercial areas, and then Champaign, of course, also asks that the campus areas also remove snow. So after looking at these, we looked at some possible alternatives to an ordinance requiring snow to be removed from sidewalks. And one is to encourage education efforts. Why is it important to remove snow from your sidewalks? And 2 of these ideas came from Mike Brunk. He's our city arborist. And he suggested that maybe we could focus on ways to reduce strain and injury when shoveling. People may be hesitant to shovel because they've injured their back before, or they had a neighbor who did. And there are some very simple ways to use ergonomics to make sure that you don't hurt your back when you do that. And he also suggested that this might be an excellent opportunity to talk about the problems with overuse of salt on trees and vegetation. Some communities offer salt or a salt and sand mixture, one of the two, to their residents to put down. But Mike Brunk said you have to be very careful because you can very easily overuse salt. When the salt washes off the sidewalks, it goes into your grass, it goes into your trees, and it can actually burn the roots, and you can completely destroy your trees. And also it's toxic to pets. So he suggested, while you're doing this education effort, talk about that, and you want to use these things very sparingly. And then as the mayor has talked about, this would also be an excellent opportunity to start using volunteers. And so we looked at volunteer programs. And the first thing we did was we looked at the census, so we could just sort of get an idea of how many people might be needing this effort. And approximately 9.3% of the city population is 65 years and older. 8.8% is disabled. Now, some of these numbers may overlap, but these numbers also don't include the people who might have suffered some sort of temporary injury. They might have some sort of illness where they can't get out and shovel, but it's only on a temporary basis. So we also looked at local volunteer organizations who offer shoveling assistance. There are a number of organizations in the community that do offer this. However, the need completely overwhelms their resources. In fact, one organization that I talked to, they asked that they specifically not be mentioned because they were concerned that if their name were to get out and people find out that they do offer this service, they would be completely inundated with people who need it, and they don't have the resources or the volunteers to take care of that. So the two program options of all the communities that we looked at seem to be one of two. Either they're administered by the city or they're administered by a social service organization. And one that we looked at specifically was in Boulder, Colorado. Now, this program is administered by the city. The program runs on no budget. They are given no money whatsoever each year. It's been in existence for about 10 years, and in that time it's been passed through about 4 departments. One department will have it until they're completely inundated, and then they'll hand it off to somebody else. So right now it's in the housing department. And to give some perspective, Boulder has about 90,000 people. Every year they average 60 to 80 volunteers, but they have about 400 people who need help. And they said it's a huge challenge. Even though they are a college community as well, they can't get volunteers. It's very difficult to recruit the number of volunteers that they need. And to kind of wrap this up, after looking at all the different programs that we looked at, there's some considerations that you may want to keep in mind. First of all, if the city were to oversee a program like this, what department would be in charge of overseeing it? Another issue are background checks. Do you want to institute this when you're pairing up a person with someone who might be older or someone who might be disabled? Another issue is who provides the equipment. Moscow, Idaho, as an example, they require that if you ask for help, you have to provide a shovel. You must provide your own shovel. No one will provide a shovel for you. And the last are age restrictions. Some communities require that you have to be 18 years and older in order to volunteer. Others require that you're 13, but you have to have a parent's permission. Some don't care at all. You can be 6 years old, and you can shovel if you want. So those are just some things to keep in mind as this goes forward. So if you have any questions.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Brandon.
Liz, thanks for your presentation. I just wanted to understand, it looked like from Table 2, every other Big Ten city, plus the other 2 you looked at, had some provision for sidewalk snow removal. Is that right?
That
only
is
ones?
correct. That is correct. We're the only one, but the level of enforcement varies significantly. Some have them just on the books. They never have enforced it since the day they passed it. And others, they may have it, they may enforce it, but they may send a lot of letters, they may do phone calls. One municipality that I spoke to, they said, well, we might send someone out, we might try to call. We're going to give them a lot of opportunities to take care of this before we actually start enforcing it.
Okay, thanks.
Dennis?
Thanks. Yeah, it's interesting how this seems like a kind of almost a mundane thing, and we don't have a lot of heavy snowfalls, but when it happens, we do have a lot of complaints. And of course, I also received an email from Robin Arbiter, and she's a person who's got a disability, and she's had some very thoughtful ideas about it that I will pass on, because if they're going to have a task force, I guess we don't have to debate the issue here on the floor of the City Council building, but we will have a forum, obviously, to make some suggestions. I really think that volunteering and being a good neighbor is probably like the very best way to encourage not only community and community values, but friendliness on the block, and partnership that we all exist here in this world. I'm totally willing to shovel my walks. I wish that people, were inspired to do so too. And yet, even though I only live 3 blocks from the city building, I find that nobody else between my house and the city building does shovel their walks, and it always makes me just amazed. It's not the I don't know, ethic that I, assumed would be true here in a small-town community. So maybe we just need to have a discussion about it and encourage it and watch for change. But if we don't, we may have to come back and sort of mandate some change in certain instances.
Is there any other discussion? Danielle?
Just quickly, when I was out at Berkeley, I noticed that Berkeley, California has a tool lending library, which actually with a checkout system similar to a book lending library, and it might be something to look at. I mean, I certainly thought in terms of liability and things like that, but they have worked something out. And so if we were to provide snow blowers, for example, which is a really easy way to clear your snow instead of shoveling, we could consider something like that. So I would just point you in that direction as well.
Definitely.
Any other discussion from council members?
That is just one more.
Go ahead, Dennis.
Let's be sure to involve neighborhood associations
You
to
took the words out
rotate.
of mine.
There you go. The idea is obviously right out there in the middle of. The neighborhood associations can actually instigate or help build neighboring snow shoveling programs.
Okay, well, thank you for your presentation, Liz. And so we'll go on with public input on this issue. I have Eric. Go ahead. Trustner?
Yes.
Okay. If you state your name and address and limit your comments to 5 minutes.
Surely. My name is Eric Trustner. I live at 108 West Stanage Avenue in Champaign, and I'm a friend of PACE. I volunteer at PACE. So my comments are just limited to, I think the committee already has trusted about the idea of volunteers and using volunteers as a viable means for removal of snow. And I think that is a terrific idea. I was also going to state that it's really, any kind of publicity that the city can do by public mailings or something of that nature would probably be a good way to get community members that would want to volunteer or raise the awareness level to have access to the knowledge that these talks and proceedings are going on. Not everybody watches public access television. And I also wanted to state that I've had instances where snowplows will come through and destroy work that I've done on my sidewalks. So, if that could be somehow thought about in the process of trying to iron out the specifics of developing a snow removal program for the sidewalks, that would be good too. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak and thank the council and the mayor.
Thank you. Next, I have Hadley Ravencroft. Ravencroft.
Hello, thank you for giving me the opportunity to address everyone today. My name is Hadley Ravencroft, and my address is 2405 East Illinois Street in Urbana. I am here representing PACE as an organization, but also myself as an individual with several disabilities. What I want to bring to light here is not only people with mobility issues like myself, but also for you to remember people who are blind or visually impaired who might use sidewalks, or those who are deaf. People might say, why does someone who is deaf matter? And that is because if someone is using sign language or who is hard of hearing, they're going to use their feet to detect where they are while they're communicating. So if the ground is slippery below them, then they have to focus on where the ground is rather than on their communication. So suddenly then it is, I'm going to fall rather than on what I'm saying. So because if you think about your communications with those who are deaf, you're looking right at someone's facial expressions and on their mouth, or if they're using American Sign Language, on their hands and what they're saying. But you're not thinking, those of us who may not be deaf, you're not thinking about what are my feet doing, where are my feet going, or someone who's deaf or hard of hearing and communicating at night, and then you put ice and snow below them. Very, very important. We've already talked about the elderly. I want to mention, we already know some statistics. People with disabilities, 1 in 5 of us have some kind of disability. Well, now as we all know, everyone is aging. That statistic is supposed to change to 1 in 3. So we all know about people who are getting older. That's everyone, folks. Everyone. So not just me who has cerebral palsy at all, okay? I have so many other things, but everyone here on the council is going to be affected in some way, whether personally or with a family member or someone else that you know, okay? So then you think about yourself, your neighbor, your grandmother, whoever that is, and you might call PACE or some other organization and say, I need to borrow a walker. Hang on a second. How is that person who's going to use a walker going to use that on the sidewalk? Well, I can tell you right now that many people that I work with at PACE call me up in the winter months and go, hang on, I can't even meet with you between November and March. Just cancel everything. Whatever it is, no matter how important, we have to try to do it by phone. And I say, is it a transportation issue? They say, no, I've got it covered with MTD. But I can't get out because of the snow. Whether it's because of their apartment complex, whether it's because they're an individual like myself, I live alone. I'm so excited that I'm a brand new homeowner, you guys, in Urbana. Right. However, now I'm by myself and I have to shovel my own walk and my own driveway. So now I'm one of those that wants to rely on a volunteer. I'm one of those that goes, oops, I have to get to work like everyone else by 8 a.m., but I have to get up extra early with a personal care person assisting me in the morning, and then I got to figure out, how am I going to get my car out before I get to work? My PA can't assist with that kind of task. I have to get up extra early. So does everyone else that I assist with, at PACE. So we're thinking about all of that. So remember that. People who are blind, visually impaired, just as the mayor said, people who use wheelchairs, okay? People who are deaf as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Thanks. Richard? Richard, I have a copy of what you typed out to us. Do you want Eric to read it for you? Is that?
Okay. Certainly.
Oh, he's also getting his book out. Thanks, Eric.
We are all like you. We work, like to go to have fun and you we are like everyone. Richard says, to you, the City Council of the City of Urbana, I, Richard Wellbank, who resides at Town and Country as a disabled man, I work like most. But when snow comes, it's hard for me to get around to shop and go eat. While Town and Country does a great job at shoveling, the city is not. And because of that, I have to go on the side streets like bikes. One day, I visited my friend on Illinois Street, and that wasn't shoveled at all. To me, Democrats should know they're better and not just say it. Sorry. To me, we need a path like on Philo Road for runners, bikes, and us who is in chairs. P-H-I-L. Philo would be good for cutting for Cunningham. Is that all? Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Paula? I'll take it, thanks. Richard, I'll keep this letter with this that got filled out.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Paula Veneer.
Hello, my name is Paula Veneer.
I live at 107. I'm West Atlanta in Urbana.
I live at 109
West number 107.
Atlanta
Illinois Avenue. I'm sorry. Street. In Urbana.
And when it snows, more than 3 inches, my wheelchair cannot go on the sidewalks. I have to take the street. I live by Lincoln Square Village. That's no was up last year, a week after the snowstorm, and when they did the sidewalk, they put the snow on the web. So I still could not use the sidewalk because I could not get on to it. And when I asked Lincoln Square, they said the city owns it. And last month I was coming home and we had snow and my wheelchair slid because I could not regain control, and it got so stick and that broke into pieces. Yeah. What? They gave me a loan to use, which is loose now, so they got duct tape on it.
Good old duct tape.
But please, if you decide to get a task force together to it quick, because by mid-March we won't need snow removal. Then that's November. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paula. Is there any questions for Paula? Go ahead, Danielle.
Yeah, just a quick question about the issue with the snow piling up on the ramps and the sidewalks at Lincoln Square. Because it's my understanding that downtown and the Lincoln Square area is cleared by the city. So is it, I'm trying to think of which ramp you're referring to. Is it a ramp on Illinois Street, or is it the ramp that goes into Tang Dynasty? What's the location of that?
That will be on Illinois Street.
Like the sidewalk where
Oh, a sidewalk
where it
ramp?
connects to the road.
Yes.
Yeah, where
To go to. Yeah.
Oh, okay, so the ramp onto the sidewalk was covered. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
as well as the sidewalk itself. Okay. Yeah, but, there's the issue there of the sidewalk being right up against the street, so we have to figure out some solution to the way in which snow plows plow snow back up onto the sidewalk. because they were probably cleared by city employees, and then
Yeah.
the plows probably put that on there. But appreciate your input, and we're going to look into how we can solve this problem.
Okay, thank you.
Next, I have Rex Bradfield.
Madam Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Rex Bradfield. I reside at 2101.5 Pond Street in Urbana, and I thought that I would put this gear on and bring the shovel with me, so when you're sitting here thinking about asking people to volunteer, you understand that we're wearing this if we volunteer, because we're out scooping snow. We're not sitting here in this room. We're out here scooping snow, running whatever it may be. And the idea of going out into 20-degree weather or less than that and wearing this type of outfit is not attractive to someone who might be my age. And trust me, I've been scooping snow since I was 8 years old, and I've probably scooped more snow than all of you put together. It was a way to make money, and it was also the right thing to do, and I certainly don't need anybody to tell me what is the right thing to do. Snow is certainly a problem. I met Richard when I was campaigning, and I found him to be a very determined individual who didn't show up to one of the things he was supposed to, and we were also concerned that we looked all over the streets for him, and he was apparently indisposed doing something else that he'd like to do. But I'd like to comment a little bit about it, that when I put this on, I weigh 220 pounds, and when I put all this on, I weigh 240 pounds. So everybody that is coming out and you're asking to volunteer or do anything in snow removal, we're adding 20 pounds to ourselves to go out and do that. But in fact, the village and the city doesn't have any financial resources to do all this, as the graphics showed, that it's just entirely too many miles of sidewalk for somebody to do it with a tax base or whatever it may be. It just can't be done. You've got somebody like Bill who is very creative, and the streets get plowed in a very efficient fashion, and that's great stuff. I live close to a school, and I never see kids having to struggle to get to school at Yankee Ridge School, because Bill makes sure those places get taken care of very quickly. But I'd like to just point out a couple of paradoxes that you have in here. I had a bunch of things, but I'd like to ask the council members just to consider this, that there was mention in there about the snow and the ice and the salt. And salt is, as was discussed, very bad for your vegetation. It's also bad because sidewalks have a slope of about a 1/4 inch per foot, usually towards the street. When you scoop the snow, after it gets scooped, then that water will run, it'll start to melt and it'll run across it. And then if you get a freeze, you have what's called black ice. He can't see it, I can't see it, you can't see it. And the only way to get rid of black ice is with the salt, but you can't salt it all the time. I will tell you that as a surveyor, in 30-some-odd years of surveying, if I do residential surveys in the wintertime, and we have to because a lot of times people sell houses, they like to know where their corners are. I've busted my behind 6 times, taken the frequent flyer miles and lit, and every time it was on a scooped sidewalk. As a surveyor, I never walk on a scooped sidewalk because it lulls me into a sense of false security. And then you hit the black ice and you're taking your frequent flyer miles. One of the things that everybody complains about is, and as was mentioned, the ramps for the disabled become plowed full, and Bill can't do anything about that. He can't stop the snows. One of the things I'd like for the council to consider is, don't be afraid to consider some type of tax increment on businesses or whatever it is to take care of this problem, and maybe change the ordinances so that any time that any work is done on ramps, heat the ramps, so that if that snow is on there, then it'll melt, and they will be melted, and they won't have ice on them, because those ramps are constructed at 1 inch per foot, which is steeper than that. A 1/4 inch per foot means that you're a degree and a couple of tenths off a kelter. So you're walking down the street like you're carrying a 5-pound weight. When you're walking on a icy sidewalk you've got a 5-pound weight on the downslope side of that. And that's why people fall, is their feet go out from underneath them because they just take that slight misstep and down they go. I like the idea of in the business districts that partial scooping does no good at all for anybody, because you're asking people, the businesses, to scoop over to the parking meter side. They're going to clear a path in Champaign that's 48 inches. Well, any kind of van that he rides in, or anybody that's disabled, they unload to the parking meter side. And if there's snow pile there, they can unload. Where do they unload? You don't have anywhere for them to even get downtown, because if they unload out in the streets, then they're out in the streets looking for a place to get up in there. So what I'm saying is perhaps some type of tax increment to clean the downtown area. Let Bill's people, who are professionals at doing it, removing snow, remove the snow. There is no snow piled up in downtown. It's pushed out to the street, loaded into trucks, and maybe taken down to a detention basin and taken care of by that way. And then all the sidewalks are open. The blind, those who the hearing was very, very interested, that they are operating normally in the business districts. So I'd like for everybody to consider that. One of the things, there's talking about education. Trust me, I don't need any education about scooping snow, but a couple of questions for the council. When you scoop a driveway, do you scoop it up the slope, do you scoop it down the slope, or do you scoop it across the slope? And the answer is you scoop it up the slope. And what is this? How many of you think that you know what this is? Heather, do you know? What is this? Be specific. It is a
Manure shovel?
right-handed scoop shovel. Did you know they make right-handed shovels?
I
and
read
left-handed
that somewhere.
shovels?
I didn't know that until I read it.
And
an
somebody
article
spoke
the other
about
day.
ergonomics. A right-handed shovel, if you'll look at this handle, see how it is at an angle?
Gotcha.
That's so when you're right-handed, you're meeting the force line. So in the matter of how they're going to do it and ergonomics, I think those are things that the city should do. But most of all, I'm over 60 years old, and I can scoop it. But do nothing that even makes anyone that is my age think that the city is requiring them to scoop walks or they will be fined, because that is not good. So whatever programs that you're considering, consider maybe a tax increase to make things safer. Consider helping those like Richard in the areas where Bill can't help but plow those ramps full, but maybe changes in ordinances over the time might do that. I'm not against the snow removal ordinances. I'm just against the government telling me I have to scoop snow. We all have gray matter, and I think that we can find a solution to this problem. Heck, we live in Illinois, so we've got to find something to do with it. We ain't California. Thank you very much for your time. And Richard, nice to see you again.
Are there any questions for Rex before he takes his gear off, or after?
I'm leaving. This is hot stuff.
Thank you, Rex.
Thank you.
Esther.
Thank you for this opportunity to address you. My name is Esther Pat. I live at 706 South Kohler Avenue. I want to address one aspect of snow removal that I hope you can address before this winter season is over, and that does not, hopefully will not require a task force study, and that is requiring the owners of multifamily housing to remove the snow on their property, on the walks on their properties and in front of their buildings. I had thought that Urbana law already required that, and in fact, as recently as 2 years ago, when I called over to Building Safety to inquire about that in the course of my job, I was directed to the Property Maintenance Code PM 301.3, Sidewalks and Driveways, which says, all sidewalks, driveways, parking spaces, and similar areas shall be kept in a proper state of repair and maintained free of hazardous conditions. And I was told that free of hazardous conditions includes free of snow and ice, and I've been operating under that assumption for many years. This year, and actually it was in response to, initially to a call from the constituent that Mr. Roberts mentioned, Robin Arbiter, people were calling back and forth, and someone called me, and I read them this, and then I checked with the city, and I was told, no, this really isn't specific enough, that that hazardous conditions are not the same as snow and ice. City of Champaign, you may know, has a city ordinance that requires the owners of all multifamily housing to remove snow and ice within 12 daylight hours of snowfall, and that is citywide. So it's not a really radical idea in this community. Now, I remember years ago, Mike Nichols, when, he was the housing inspector for many years up until he passed about, I don't know, it was not quite 10 years ago. He said to me, he said, you realize, I mean, one time when I called him for my job at the tenant union, he said, you realize there's a problem with enforcement in terms of actually citing and fining people because, and this is, we all live here, other than the events like 98 and last Valentine's Day, around here, it snows, it melts, it snows, it melts, it snows, it melts. And so if it snows on Thursday, it could be a week, no one bothers shoveling it. And then, by the next week, Friday, Saturday, it's melted again. And unfortunately, I think that's what a lot of owners of apartment buildings do, is just wait for it to melt. If you're a person who uses a wheelchair or a walker, if the landlord does not remove the snow, you are trapped in your home. Trapped. Even if you own a car, you cannot get from the front door of your apartment to the car. Even if you call a taxi cab, you cannot get from the front door of your apartment to the curb to get into the cab. That is really the most important reason that shoveling should be done. And it's not just people who use walkers and wheelchairs. I live in an apartment building. It's an owner-occupied building, so I'm the one who shovels the snow. When I first moved in, 3 of the 6 owners were, well, actually 2 were senior citizens in their 80s. Now, they didn't use walkers, they didn't use wheelchairs, but yeah, I mean, I couldn't possibly just walk out that door and go to work and leave the walks that way and expect either of them to take the risk of just walking down the stairs, even to their car or to the curb to get picked up by a friend and take a fall and break a hip. I mean, there are so many people living in multifamily housing, and there's really no reason why the owners can't take care of that snow removal. It's just a matter if they don't bother. And if they call the city and say, do I have to? The answer is no, you don't. And that's really what I'd like to see change, is that the answer be, oh, yeah, you do. And, I'll tell you, I have several interests in this. I work at the tenant union. I'm a volunteer on the board at PACE. But I shovel for my apartment building. And our building's on a corner, and we've got 65 feet of sidewalk on the south side, and we have 135 feet of sidewalk on the west side. And then we have six garages with driveways. And when I get up in the morning and I spend an hour shoveling that all up so that everyone can get in and out safely and people can walk by, and then I walk the 3/4 of a mile from my house to work and pass apartment buildings owned by big companies, and I don't have a snowblower either. I just use it. I don't have a heavy shovel like that. I got a plastic one. It's a little easier to lift. I'm 52 years old. I'm not that strong. But then I walk to work, and I pass these apartment buildings owned by these big companies that have 30 employees and all sorts of equipment, and day after day after day, they just haven't shoveled. I think that should change, and I hope that you will do something about that soon, because I think that'd be very easy just to correct the property maintenance code to clarify that which at some point your staff thought it already said. Thank you.
Laurel, go ahead.
Yeah. Esther, does Champaign enforce
enforce?
multifamily? Because
The way they enforce their housing code.
they just passed the thing about the downtown.
Well, see,
They passed
that
the
one-
thing about the
that one was
downtown. There's
wacky.
A
That
lot
one-
of controversy. So has it worked in Champaign, or is it like Evanston?
To a large, I think to a large extent, it's like, I don't want to get off topic here, but the housing codes in general in Urbana and Champaign work because a high percentage of property owners, just like all people, are law-abiding people, and if you tell them, hey, you violate the law, fix it, they will. If you don't cite them, if you don't try to enforce against them, some comply, some don't. Everybody's different, but yeah, I don't think that there's more snow removal going on in apartment buildings in Champaign than there is in Urbana. It's just disturbing that that when trying to persuade a landlord to do it in Urbana, we can't even pull out the code and say PM 301.3 says. And that, I think that would be helpful. And I don't want to make it sound like all landlords don't do it either. With that big snowstorm, I already told the mayor this, I'll tell you this, last year, I got up in the morning and shoveled while the snow was still falling because I thought there's no way at the end of the day I'm going to be able to lift a foot or more of snow. And when I came back home, I was just going to do it again. And as I was coming home, all of the properties owned by or managed by the Weiner companies were shoveled. And I was very impressed to see that. On the other hand, and it might be because of this problem with there being no parkway between the sidewalk and the street, on Lincoln Avenue, it was March 9th. The snowfall was February 13th, and March 9th was the first day a person could walk down the sidewalk on the east side of Lincoln Avenue past buildings owned, I'm not going to name their names, but those of you in the neighborhood know who they are, by big companies that didn't bother to do what I and two other women who live in my building, one of whom is older than I, did, to just get out there with the shovels and fight it, and even wait 2 days if you couldn't get it all up and chop it with the shovel and try to break up the ice and get it up. They just let it sit for 3.5 weeks till it all melted away, and that's not acceptable.
Brandon.
Yeah, Esther, thanks for your input. In your experience dealing with all these property management and maintenance companies, how many of them shovel or clear the parking lots for cars? Is it a small fraction or half of them or more?
Depends how deep the snow is. I mean, a lot. There's some who just do it. In fact, I don't know, Richard, if it's even an inch, at Town and Country, they do the parking lot, don't they? Yeah. Yeah, and of course, because people forget the garbage dumpsters and the recycling, even besides driving cars. At a lot of buildings, and mostly this is my observation just from being a pedestrian, at a lot of places, the snow has to be deep enough in the parking lot that people, you can't get the car out, like 4 inches. A lot of times when it's just 1 or 2 inches of snow, no one bothers. And that's the part where it's really, where it really has a negative impact on folks who have any mobility limitation, whether whether you need a wheelchair or even a senior citizen. 1 inch of snow and ice, and then once people walk on, you all know this, once you walk on the snow a little bit, then it turns into ice, and it's even slipperier than when it was snow, and people will walk on it. 1 inch is enough to really have to, to require snow removal. So we shouldn't just think about these big events where there's a foot of snow, but the 6 to 8 times a year that we have a snowfall that makes it hard to pass on the walks, something needs to be done. And I do think, and I know I said this to the mayor, having a system of mandating that homeowners all shovel their sidewalks and having the potential for fines is, I think, real problematic. If a homeowner leaves town for 10 days, it's not realistic to expect them to hire someone to supervise their home in case it maybe snows, and what if it doesn't, and how do you work out paying someone to be on, it'd be nice if people do this voluntarily, but I think that'd be a problem. If you own a multifamily building, with the few exceptions of buildings like, well, actually, even mine, we have one tenant, so you're a business, and if you're a business owner, you leave town for 10 days, you hire someone to, if you already have someone on staff, to take care of your business while you're gone. So that's not an unreasonable thing to require of someone. And I think it'd be a lot, there are even though more than half the population live in multifamily housing in Urbana, the number of actual apartment buildings is far smaller than the number of single-family homes, so it's a little easier to communicate out and to monitor. But I'm not looking for fining. I just really think if you have this whole rental registration program, you create this whole thing, how about, send these people a letter saying you're supposed to shovel your walk and quote a law to them and see how many more of them do.
Any other questions or comments for Esther? Go ahead, Dennis.
Well, Esther, because I did get the same email apparently from Robin Arbitry, and she did make some suggestions about that very part of the law, and I thought, well, why not go farther and add some language that would require those who buildings where leasing or renting to disabled citizens, building owners where there is leasing or renting to disabled citizens should have mandatory accessibility in and out of their buildings. And that would have to require a mandatory snow removal, because they're in the business and their clients are disabled and they know they are, and I think that they have a responsibility to make sure that those people can get out, get food, buy food, and get to the bus if necessary, or a car or a taxi. So I don't know, we're going to obviously talk about these proposals and come up with something. I think your ideas are right in line.
Good, thank you.
Did you have something for Esther, Richard?
Richard was just tossing that if you were to fine, you should use the fine revenue, put the fine revenue back into a program to pay for snow removal.
You're so smart, Richard. All right, well, being that we don't have any more discussion on this, thank you everyone for all your input, and I'm sure, go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah, I did get one more email from somebody who asked if I could read her letter really quickly at the meeting, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
Judy West from 3103 South Myra Ridge just wanted me to pass on the note. She says, I'm interested in the topic being discussed this evening. I can't attend the meeting personally. I'm hoping these comments can be submitted. I'm both an individual who is blind and I'm a rehabilitation instructor of the blind representing Urbana. I and the individuals I teach would benefit greatly from prompt snow removal from the sidewalks. Retaining proper orientation and traveling with a white cane or guide dog is greatly hindered with snow. Many blind individuals lose their orientation when they cannot follow along the edges of sidewalks or line up to remain straight when crossing at intersections. Prompt snow removal is an excellent solution to this seasonal problem. She also added, she says, now if only we could stop store owners from piling up the excess snow in the accessible parking spots on private parking lots, we'd have another snow issue solved as well.
Thanks, Brandon. Next on our agenda, we have the discussion of street lighting and sustainability. And I have quite a, well, three. Annette, and then Stuart, and then Gary.
There's an essay up here in case you want it. Hi, I'm Annette Stump. I live at 319 Elmwood Drive, Champaign. I'm here to represent the U.S. Green Building Council. And we have a local chapter of the U.S. Green Building Council. I'd like to invite the city of Urbana to join. And if you pay a membership fee, then anyone associated with you can get the member discount when you take training or you buy the lead reference guide. So what I brought for you today is there's a series of rating tools by the U.S. Green Building Council. It's a consensus-based document. There's LEED for new construction, LEED for existing buildings, LEED for neighborhood development, that's under development, LEED for homes, LEED for commercial interiors, LEED for core and shell. There's 5 main areas in LEED: sustainable sites, water efficiency, energy and atmosphere, materials and resources, and indoor environmental quality. And there's one LEED credit for light pollution. So there's been a lot of conversation about the lights. So what I brought was the information from this book, the LEED reference guide. This is on how to earn the light pollution credit, okay? And it's there's a series of different kind of communities. The ones out in the country are darker, and there's 4 levels of lighting. So a very high populated area would have more lighting, and so it's a graduated lighting. And this tells you how to earn the light pollution credit. It complies with ASHRAE IESMA. And if you buy lights that the light doesn't go up into the sky, and then you arrange them the right way, you can earn the credit. Bloomington is already using LEED, There's a lot of communities that are using LEED. I thought it would just simplify everything. If you knew what the light pollution credit requirements were, read them, figured out, can you get this? Can this be policy? So there's, when you actually register a project with U.S. Green Building Council, you pay money and you register the project. You can earn 4 different levels. You can earn certified, silver, gold, platinum, and you get different credits. The more credits you get, the higher rating you get. And light pollution credit is considered a cheap credit because you buy the lights anyway, so it's just a matter of designing them properly, the layout. So I've got, this is, if you were going to actually register a project, you could submit your evidence that you've passed the credit online. This is the template. So I just wanted to offer this to you and offer the help of the U.S. Green Building Council if you have any questions. There's people that live in Urbana that are part of USGBC. I'm just...
Charlie.
Annette, you sent an email out earlier with that attachment. Did that go to all council members?
No.
No, just to me? Okay. You make an interesting statement here that I don't completely understand. You say there's no such thing as LEED certified lighting. There's only lighting that meets LEED requirements once you do the calculations. You want to elaborate a little bit on that?
LEED doesn't certify lighting fixtures in themselves. What you do is you look at the layout of the lighting, the kind of quality of lighting, the light level, and the design characteristics of the lights themselves. And there's technical requirements. If you do the calculations and you meet the light levels that are prescribed for that, one of the 4 lighting areas, then you can earn the light credit. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That's what I'm trying to understand.
Okay.
Is
Like
you
there
can't
is-
just go buy something.
No.
You have to design. You have to design for the environment you're in.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Go ahead, Robert.
When you mentioned calculations relative to light levels, is that relative to candle power when you talked about the graduated levels?
There's LZ1 is dark, park and rural settings. LZ2 is low, residential areas. LZ3 is medium, commercial, industrial, high-density residential. I think that would be the campus area. LZ4 is high, is major city centers. I think that when I read the details, it was over 100,000 people. And then the exterior lighting is based on lighting power density, which is watt per square foot.
The same. Okay, thanks.
Are there any questions or comments for Annette?
So
Thank you.
I'm going to give you guys these, and you can copy them and share them. Okay, but you don't have this part from my book, unless you bought the book. Okay? Okay, thanks. So this is like $150. It's $250, I think, if you join USGBC. We joined the whole Army for $1,000.
Next, I have Stuart. Again, if you could just state your name and your address and limit your comments to 5 minutes.
Sure. I'm Stuart Levy. I live at 1108 Foley Avenue in Champaign. I'm very glad to see that the City Council is talking about lighting. I'd seen a note in this memorandum that it's not clear whether full cutoff lighting was a good idea, and I wanted to say that it probably is, and also there are good examples of it to be seen in Champaign. I'm not sure whether I've seen that many in Urbana, but there's a great mix of lighting types, and I know Gary will be saying something about this too, so I won't say very much, but probably the most common type of lighting has a tall pole and a hook and a lamp with a lens hanging down beneath it. And so light from this drop lens goes in many directions. It goes down, which is good. It also goes off to the side. And if you look at a street that's illuminated by these the drop lens type, which are not full cutoff fixtures, most of the light that you see is coming directly from the sides of all the lenses. There's a lot of glare from them. And so if, like me, you have incipient cataracts, and probably a lot of older people have much more in the way of those than I do, you get a great deal of glare from all these lights. But in places where there are full cutoff fixtures, which could even have the same kind of structure, except that rather than having a lens, they have a flat base. So it's maybe a bit like the lights here in the ceiling. So they illuminate down, and but as you go off, looking off to the side of them, there's very little light. So, for example, on White Street to the west of Wright in Champaign, they've outfitted the whole street with these. And if you look out along the street, you see there's kind of soft illumination for the sidewalks and the streets and doorways and people and so forth. But there's very little glare from the light fixtures themselves, unless you happen to be standing beneath one and looking up, as people mostly aren't doing. So it's a very good way to think about lighting. People often get the impression that if they can see a lot of light coming from the light fixture, then it must be doing a good job. But the job of a light fixture should really be to illuminate the things under it and around it, and not to make it obvious that there's a light fixture here. So I guess that's what I wanted to say.
Are there any questions or comments for Stuart? Thank you.
Could I say one more thing? Yes. I know that there's been discussion of light-emitting diodes for fixtures, and the fixture design, this applies regardless of what it is that's providing a light, whether it's a high-pressure sodium lamp, as many of them are, or a compact fluorescent lamp, or LEDs. So that's really pretty much orthogonal to the question of the fixture design and how the light is distributed. Thanks.
Thanks, Stuart. Gary?
I think it's still down here. Yeah, okay. Yeah, this is a bit of a follow-up to the last meeting. There was some discussion of lighting and LED and LED and full cutoff and this type of thing. And there was a memo put together by the city staff, Mr. Gray and Ms. Tyler, reacting to some of that. And I wanted to comment on some of the observations there. One comment that was made having to do with LED lamps, light-emitting diodes, was that these didn't meet requirements of the Illuminating Engineering Society of North America. I've tried to find out what this is all about, and what I could find is that there have been no standards yet set for solid-state lighting technology, and they were planning to do this for early 2008. So I don't know why LEDs would not qualify at this point if there are no standards. They can produce light, and if whatever amount of light you want, they should be able to do that. So maybe the city staff could talk about that. Another comment was that it was mentioned it is premature to state that only a full cutoff fixture will be specified. So I thought it would be useful to give you an idea of what we're talking about by full cutoff. Maybe the word sounds negative and it sounds like you're giving something up, but in fact, you're not giving anything up. It's a good light. A full cutoff simply means that the light is being projected below the horizontal. That's all it is. And so you have an illustration here of what this looks like. These are more cost efficient, as it says here. The light goes down where you need it. It reduces the glare, as Stuart was talking about, provides more even illumination, reduces light trespass into neighboring properties, and also helps preserve the dark night sky, which some people are interested in. And it's one of the things I'm interested in, too. One of the things we have here in Urbana, this part of the world, we don't have a lot of mountains and lakes, but we have big skies. And during the daytime we see that. We really don't see much of them anymore at night because of problems of light pollution. So this is good lighting. This is full cutoff, okay? I can give you another example right here. See my hand? And you can't see the light source, right? That's a flashlight. Flashlights are full cutoff because when you use them, you don't want the light coming back in your face, obviously. It's nothing really high-tech, although this is a neat little LED lamp. This is really pretty powerful. You have bad lights. which send the light up, you can see by the yellow, into the sky. It wastes the light, and this is wasting energy and wasting the light. It's not having to go. It's not going where it should be going. And then you have the ugly. These are like globe lights, illuminate little, but for the bellies of birds, as in this. This is provided by the McDonald Observatory. I stole this off the web. And if you look around in Urbana, I have yet to find any good lighting outside. Maybe there's some in Champaign, because I don't see any full cutoff. We have a lot of bad lighting, and we have a whole lot of ugly lighting in town. So when it's stated here that it's premature to state that only a full cutoff fixture will be specified, it's a bit like saying it's premature to state that only good lighting will be specified. Another thing I wanted to mention here is that, again, related to the same theme, that there's some, in the memo, discussion that limiting nuisance lighting and light pollution can involve trade-offs with maintaining safety standards and crime prevention and must be carefully balanced. There's no balance here. This is a win-win. So this is not really accurate. The best light is putting it down. Street lighting should go on the street. Where is the street? It's down. It shouldn't be going out at 90 degrees and above 90 degrees. And so there's no trade-off here. Putting the light down where it's supposed to go makes more sense. It's safer. And so there's actually no trade-off here. And a final thing that I wanted to do is whether LEDs are up to this is something that's being looked at. Unfortunately, I couldn't get my file to work here that shows what is being done in Ann Arbor. But I can just mention to you that they have set up a test area of residential lighting on a street in Ann Arbor. These are LEDs, and they have asked their residents what they thought of this. 81 of 83 responses have been overwhelmingly positives about the LED lights that they have been put up. So people like these lights for a number of reasons. I won't go into all of those. But the interesting thing from the financial side is that they did a little bit of a cost analysis over the life cycle of these. And when you look at the cost of bulb replacements of typical lights, $35. You compare that to what they currently have for comparable LEDs, $400. So this looks like a big difference, and it is. The difference is, however, that the typical bulbs have to be replaced typically every 2 years. So there's labor and equipment there, there's a ballast igniter, and there's also the energy cost. And so they in their preliminary calculations, over 10 years, existing bulbs that they have would cost $1,935 over 10 years. So that's almost $2,000. The energy costs and the savings on bulb replacements and labor for the LEDs, they calculate to be $824. So that's $1,100 and $11 difference between the two. This is just talking about the light fixtures and the light bulbs themselves and putting those in. So there is significantly more upfront cost if LEDs are going to be pursued, but there is payback. And they estimate that the new bulbs would pay for themselves in 3.3 years. So I just wanted to share that with you. Yeah, okay, that PDF, I can do that, yeah. So I don't know if anybody has any questions.
I'm sorry. I'm back falling asleep on this, Mayor.
I'm really happy that you gave the statistics on the break-even point, because I thought that was really critical. So if you have a chart that says all those things that you just said about the 10 years and the 3.3 years, that would
Right,
be
this
great.
is based on Ann Arbor's estimates, right.
Okay, but
right.
I would love to
have
see that. Thank
Right.
you very much.
Are there any other questions for Gary or comments? Thank you for your presentation.
I have a
Gary.
general comment on the
Okay.
topic.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks. Go ahead, Charlie, and then,
Well, I don't know if Bill and or
Bill?
Libby wanted to speak first, or the consultant from the project.
Yeah, I did ask Tom Burtoness from Burtoness Engineering to join us this evening. Tom, his firm is assisting the city of Champaign and University of Illinois and Urbana in looking at coming up with a request for proposal for lighting equipment. Tom will be putting together this request for proposal here very soon. We'll be looking at and be sharing with you what we'll be going out to solicit vendors to try to meet these specifications that we're looking at here. So I have really no comments other than what I stated in the memo. We do have cutoff fixtures in many places in Urbana. Tall poles are all newly constructed poles are cutoff fixtures. Just FYI to the public. And just my comments are what they are in the memo. We have no conclusions at this juncture. We're interested in what the public's comments are, and appreciate Annette's and Gary's and Mr. Stewart's comments and others. And there's no final design at this juncture, other than I think in the memo there is no, to our knowledge, nor in the very near future, an LED fixture that is highway that can meet the highway standards that we're looking for here. And I think that's a critical comment here. To my knowledge, I've not spoken to anybody in Ann Arbor, but my understanding with the LED lights in Ann Arbor are really for sidewalk lighting. They're not really highway lighting per se. The vendors that are out there, Lumek and others, there is no LED highway streetlight fixture at this time. We're probably several years away yet before that technology is available. Tom can, no pun intended, illuminate on why that isn't available right now, but or maybe I should say enumerate. But anyway, believe me, if it was, and that'd be great if it was, we'd be jumping on it, and so would every other city in the United States be jumping on it. So it's not like we're being resistive by any means. Ironically, last week in one of the listservs in Public Works that I follow, someone from Des Moines, Iowa had asked, has anybody used LED highway lighting out there? And these are comments from coast to coast, from Canada to the Gulf, and no, it just isn't there yet. So I don't think it's just staff telling you this, that the technology isn't quite there yet. So if you have comments, other questions, we'll try to answer them.
Yeah, I guess, a couple of concerns here, of course, is doing a LEED certifiable project, I think, could be very, very attractive, and it seems like things are moving that direction. And Ed's group and others are available, I guess, to help out with that. So I appreciate everybody trying to focus in on that. The idea of the LED lighting, it may be possible that, if it's only available for the street light, or for the sidewalk level lighting. I know that a lot of this is two-phase. I'd just simply like to see any energy savings that can be incorporated as soon as possible brought into this project, and any designs that are used, thinking, in terms of LED use in, 2 or 3 years when it does become available. A question for both of you might be, Calgary has made a big commitment to LED lighting. They show pictures before and after of sections of the city where they've done LED. So I'm from what you're saying, then their sidewalks are LED, but their street lighting is not. That seems to be the implication.
I can't speak for Calgary. I just don't know.
Yeah, so I'm sort of curious. I'm actually sort of surprised because I did see one of the examples that was sent to me was a series of LED street lights, and I can dig that up. I don't know if Gary sent that around, but I did see one example of a city that had taken a street and put in LED street lights instead of in their regular fixtures.
A community we could today install an LED fixture on our street, okay? But that's not going to provide you the light levels, the right distribution, or the foot candles that, our standards are. We have an LED street light fixture, parking lot fixture in the first pole outside of our door at Public Works. We've been following each generation of LED fixture. We've installed them and looked at them. If we want to merely as a community install LED lighting and forego all the other criteria and parameters that go into designing lighting, we can do that today if that's what you want. But
one of the things about that or that example that I was going to say is that if you look at the before and after, the before has a very even lighting down the street. The after has these pockets of light and dark. Okay, so in their example, you know, the LED lighting, yeah, it does work, but it isn't a complete even illumination, and that would probably annoy people. I know if I were driving through there or walking through there, moving from light to dark to light to dark, it would, you know, the only way to fix it would have been to double the number of poles that they had, or maybe it was just simply they just didn't, you know, they since LEDs are so directional, you really need a design that it angles out. So it may just simply have been a poor design so that it distributes better. But I'll dig that up and send it to you.
Well, if I might just sort of launch into my comments, Bill asked me to come and make some observations on some of the documents that have been prepared, and just to give you a little bit of my background. Most of you are new on the council since the last time I addressed the council. So I'll give you a little bit about my background. I started doing decorative streetlight installations in about 1977 and began engineering them shortly thereafter. I've had my own consulting engineering firm since 1984, and I've been doing lighting engineering since then, and in the early 90s began to be involved with the city of Urbana as the series street lighting was declining in its usefulness. And we began a series of preliminary design projects to determine what the criteria for the city of Urbana were going to be, and then went into the design phases and replaced the series streetlights going from approximately Fort Florida all the way up to University, and then from Cottage Grove on the east over to Lincoln, somewhere 1,000 poles, something like that. And along about that time, I began to work for the city of Champaign, same type of work to replace the series lighting that was deteriorating there. We then went from there to the downtown, actually the arterials around on Florida and Green Street. We developed that new fixture, which is designated the L72 fixture, to light the arterials and collectors at a little bit higher level. And then we went to downtown and replaced all those. So all those street lighting projects that have been done in those areas over the last decade or so, I've done the engineering on those. And then Campus Town was noting its decline over the years, and Champaign entered into a preliminary design project to rehabilitate Campus Town. And a significant element of that was the lighting, and I was a part of that preliminary design, and I designed all that lighting there. So the decorative lighting that you see all around Lincoln Square and around the courthouse and around Campus Town was engineered by us over the last decade or so. So I've been involved with the lighting here for quite some time, and as Bill said, recently the university asked me to do this project for the university district street lighting, and that's what we're involved in now, and that's what is going to be coming up here shortly. I am a member of the IESNA. I am also on the IESNA Street and Area Lighting Committee, which is the body which is charged with determining standards for street and area lighting in the United States. And the IESNA is the lead in the lead group in the international IES, and that stands for the Illuminating Engineering Society. I'm a registered professional engineer, and so this is one of my passions. I love talking about lighting. I love designing lighting. It's been something that I have found very rewarding over the years. Just as a side note, with respect to LEDs, you know, we know that University of Illinois is the home of the LED, invented by Nick Oniak, and my father, Roger Burtness, shared an office for many years with Nick over at the U of I. My father was a professor of electrical engineering, so I grew up hearing stories about the invention of the laser and the invention of the LED, and so this goes way back in my family. So all this is very important to me. Bill asked me to look at the documents that have been being brought together and make some comments. And what I'm seeing is that there are three basic questions. Number one is, what are the appropriate design criteria for lighting installations in the city of Urbana? And what are those aspects of criteria, and how do they apply in different parts of the city? Number two is, what's the state of viability for LED technology in street lighting applications? And number three is, what is the applicability of LEED for street lighting? And it sounds like you already know the difference between LED and LEED, so I won't belabor that point. I haven't met Gary. I've read some of his stuff, but I was interested to read his stuff. And one of his documents, he talks about 5 E's: efficiency, effectiveness, economy, ecological, and aesthetic. And those are goals and a big picture that we can all agree with. The problem is, how do those things apply, and what are the realities of the technology and of the science? And I'd like to suggest that those are important goals, and those kind of summarize to energy efficiency. And what's I've heard discussed in the 3 comments tonight, and primarily in these memos, is talking about energy efficiency, talking about stray light, light trespass, and light pollution, which are different concepts, but I'm not going to go in depth into any of those definitions. As a matter of fact, I have an IES document here which is about 113 pages of lighting definitions. So these, there's pretty intense stuff here. So we're talking about stray light, light trespass, sky glow, dark sky considerations, glare reduction, light pollution. Those are all things that have been discussed so far, and they're all very important criteria. But there are a number of other criteria which are important and which have been included in much discussion over the last decade in terms of determining lighting criteria in Urbana, and much council discussion and much staff time. And those include things like safety, which is the freedom from harm; security, which is the sense of being safe in a place. There's the sense of place, in other words, that I'm not just in a dark hole, but I'm actually in an environment, and how I relate psychologically with that environment. There's crime deterrence, in particular violent crime and rape is a very important consideration because of our university community. There's historic continuity. These are all design criteria that we look at. The globe fixtures, I'll just make a comment on those. The globe fixtures, one of the dominant criteria for those was historic continuity. And I might just, I did bring something. I didn't know if I'd use it, but I'll go ahead and do that, just to give you a little bit of a background. The globe fixture, if it's by itself and used just as a globe, it will, especially with an incandescent lamp, it will throw the light in every direction. However, we went to great length when we designed the globe fixtures in Urbana to maintain the historic continuity, to make sure that we were actually optically putting the light where we wanted it. And so this is an example of a high-pressure sodium light lamp. Middle halide lamp is very similar. If you'll notice, the arc tube, the white part in the middle, is vertically oriented. So all the light, this lamp is designed to throw the light out sideways. If you look at the end of the arc tube, there is almost, it's actually metal on the end, there's almost no light that comes out the top of that lamp. Okay, so all the light is coming out sideways. This lamp is in a refractor which is inside those globes, which you can't see. And this refractor has a street side and a house side, and it's designed to take the light rays that are coming out of this horizontally and then bend that light along the roadway, so most of the light goes towards the road rather than towards the house. So you can't see these components. You don't see, what's happening in there. But the city of Urbana over the years has gone to significant length to do everything that we could within the context of the historic continuity to make sure that we're not throwing the light in the wrong direction, and that we're getting as efficient an installation as we can within the other design constraints. For example, historic continuity. We also incorporated the dome of the globe in the globe areas on the collector fixture that has a globe in it to maintain historic or aesthetic continuity between the various fixtures. So these are some of the criteria that go into it. A few more. Commerce. How many of you have noticed what has happened in Campustown since we did the Campustown streetscape improvement? How many new buildings have been built? How many new businesses from outside the community have come in? The Wendy's is gone, okay? It's a big, beautiful brick building with two, good businesses in there, Noodles and Company, and what's the other one? Whatever it is. So, Chipotle. Okay. Well, Starbucks. Okay, came and so we've had tremendous commerce, tremendous economic redevelopment since the public invested in the infrastructure. And one of the most visible elements is the street lighting. It has both nighttime application and daytime application. It's the vertical design element that everybody notices, whether they notice it or not. And I would encourage you to understand this. As you're watching the television, watch how many shots in movies and dramatic TV series have a street light in them. It's absolutely uncanny if you watch it, because we are geared towards feeling a certain way when we see street lighting equipment. It's like jewelry on an outfit. Okay, the jewelry makes a completely different. It emphasizes the beautiful aspects of things. Okay, so street lighting has a lot of different design implications besides just throwing the light on the pavement. Optical efficiency, color temperature, color rendition, how well that you can determine a color when that street light is thrown onto that car or that sweater, how well you see that color. There are cutoff considerations. There's aesthetics in the daytime. Okay, what does this look like, this installation look like in the daytime? What does it look like at nighttime, and what illumination does it provide? There's also illumination standards that come from the IESNA, and I brought a whole group of my standards, my IES standards here, that we develop, or that we go by when we develop designs. One is RP8. This is kind of the Bible of street lighting. It's the national practice for roadway lighting. That's about 100 pages. Luminaire classification for outdoor luminaires. I'm going to read a little bit there. Lighting for exterior environments. This is a whole book that describes all these design criteria that I've just been talking about and how they get applied in particular applications. The lighting design process, light trespass, research results and recommendations, addressing obtrusive light, urban sky glow, and light trespass in conjunction with roadway lighting, and recommended lighting for walkways and Class 1 bikeways. These are, when I talk about IES standards, this is what I'm talking about, the recommended practices. So there are all these considerations, and some of them will be applied in certain ways in certain areas of the community, and they'll be applied in different ways in other areas of the community. For example, the full cutoff fixtures that were just referred to, yes, we want to put light where we want it. We don't want glare. However, there are different applications in different locations, and I'd like to address that specific question because it's come up several times in the documentation and also mentioned tonight. This is TM 15, Technical Manual 15 by the IESNA, Luminaire Classification for Outdoor Luminaires. And I quote, "In recent years, the IESNA cutoff classification system has been used for purposes well beyond the technical intent. Full cutoff lighting is often cited as the best system to control light pollution. However, there has been limited consideration related to the ability for full cutoff optics to distribute light at angles necessary to illuminate vertical objects." Now, let me pause there. When you are in an outdoor environment, you're walking down the street, okay, and somebody is approaching you, okay, there's light on the ground, that's great. That lights up the sidewalk so you won't trip on that curb or that bump in the sidewalk. However, when I'm walking down the street, I want to be able to see that person's face. Okay, we're talking about vertical illumination. The illumination is not just to throw light on the ground. It is also to throw light sideways. And that light that's thrown sideways illuminates your face, because I need to determine if you're a friend or foe. I need to determine if it's my time to walk across the street and continue on down, or turn around, or whatever I need to do. So vertical illumination is a critical design component, which is not addressed in any of the documents that I've seen, and as a matter of fact, the statement was just made that the only good light is light that's thrown down. Well, it is important to throw light down, no doubt about it. However, there are locations, particularly where there's pedestrian activity, where the light needs to be thrown sideways as well, where we have vertical illumination. So the concept of cutoff, let me continue on here. A common misconception is that only luminaires with a high degree of cutoff, in other words, full cutoff, will have minimum uplight, but this is not always the case. Some cutoff, semi-cutoff, or even non-cutoff luminaires have minimal uplight. So the luminaires that we've been installing around the city of Urbana have taken these things into consideration, and I want to encourage you that it's important to continue using all the design criteria that are important in an installation and not just reduce it to one or two criteria. For instance, using only full cutoff fixtures. Okay, that may be appropriate in some areas. For instance, an arterial street like University Avenue, which does have full cutoff luminaires on it, where most of the activity is vehicular, and you're wanting to illuminate the street to an appropriate level. Okay, so that's a little background. The problem is that sometimes these criteria are in conflict with one another. So how do you determine how to resolve those conflicts? And that's what a good design will do. And I'm concerned about some of the concepts that have been mentioned, just limiting it to just a couple of criteria, like using full cutoff fixtures and looking at LEDs as the only potential effective energy efficient device. So what I'd suggest is that as the council determines its priorities and criteria, that it takes all these things into account in a comprehensive policy rather than just limiting that to a couple of criteria. Okay. So let's talk about LEDs for a moment. That's the second area. What is the promise of LED? Well, the promise of LEDs seems to be significant. They're fantastic devices. They work great in traffic signals. You know, that's a no-brainer. Yeah, they cost a little bit, but once you put them in there, I mean, they're long life and so forth. So they're great for that. They're great for brake lights on cars. Okay, low voltage, high efficiency, high brightness, etc. So most of the new cars have LEDs in them. You can tell the difference because when you see the brakes go on, that light comes on instantaneously rather than an incandescent will kind of glow to bright and then glow down. LEDs are on and off instantaneously. Well, they work good in those, they work fantastic in those applications because they're low power applications and they're directional. They're pointing the light in a specific direction and they have a duty cycle. They go on and off. Okay? In street lights, we want to light an area and we want them on for 12 hours or so at a time. And so there are other considerations that go into outdoor lighting. They're great in flashlights, okay, as we just saw. They're great in architectural accent lighting. I was just down in Jacksonville, Florida, and they've got this bridge going across the bay, and it's got this blue light, you know, tube that goes all the way along. And they use LEDs in a lot of applications like that. They're wonderful. The question is, what is the application for street lighting? And that's a different story. What's happening in the LED industry is that they're looking for the next market sector. Where are we going to be able to make money if we're in the LED business? Where are we going to make money? And they're looking for that. And they're looking at outdoor lighting as one of those areas. The engineering realities are that LEDs are really two-directional for lighting. We don't want to light one little pinpoint like with a flashlight. We want to light a street. It's the same comment that you were making a while ago. So what you have to do is you have to diffuse the light. So you have to put an extra element in there to diffuse the light. Well, this cuts down on the efficiency of the device. The biggest problem with them is junction temperature. The physics of it is that this thing creates heat when it's creating light, and this heat has to be conducted away. It can't be convected. Okay? The heat has to be moved away in order for this LED to not break down. And they have not figured out how to do that effectively, especially in higher wattage applications. LEDs generate a low level of lumens. In other words, the amount of light that comes out of them is still low level, so you have to have lots and lots of them to get enough light. Let me just pause to talk about the Ann Arbor installation. This is pointed as one of the big, examples of a good LED installation. As a matter of fact, this fixture is supplied by Lumec, who is the supplier to the city of Urbana. This is a new Westminster, so it's the same basic fixture as the globe fixture in Urbana, and what they've done is they've retrofitted it with an LED engine. Now, all the information, interestingly enough, that you read about this, it says the LED lights burn 5 times longer than the bulbs they replace. Well, that's when they were talking about incandescence. Energy use cut in half. Well, let me, I know the people who are doing this project. I've talked with them. They're friends of mine. And they said what all these articles don't tell you is that when they started, they were actually using metal halide, 100-watt metal halide to switch to 58-watt LED. So they had a 58% or a reduction to 58% of the energy. However, that reduced the light to 29.8%. So there was a 70% reduction in light level by a 58%, by a 42% reduction in power. Okay, so they're not actually saving money for what they're buying. They're saving money because they're buying less. They're buying less light. And a number of the people that I've talked to and the LUMEC people, the comments they've gotten about this installation is that it's turned the area, because there is almost no horizontal light going out, so there's no vertical illumination. The building fronts are no longer being illuminated. The people are no longer being illuminated. The people that are talking to LUMEC are saying it's become a dreary place down there. There's not enough light, and they think, you know, if you look at these, you see the exact spots of the LEDs as they hit the light, as they hit the globe. And most of the people who see that have said that they don't like that. Okay, it's a completely different effect. So one of the things I'm trying to say here is that if you read an article on the internet, it's not necessarily the whole story. As a matter of fact, I will give you a thing that you can try out with all these articles that were cited. I only used articles, just for the sake of my doing this, I only used articles that were referenced in the thing here. And by the way, I'm in favor about 90% of what's in this, what's in this discussion. I'm all for dealing with light trespass and all those things. It's just that there's an appropriate way to do it, and it's a little bit more complicated than just saying, well, let's use LEDs or let's use full cutoff fixtures. What you will find if you go through the articles on Ann Arbor and I believe it's Tarraca, Italy, Tarraca, Italy, and some of the other locations here, Raleigh, North Carolina, Toronto. I'm not sure about, you say Calgary? Okay, I didn't find one reference to that. But you will find in every one of these locations that somewhere in there, as a matter of fact, there's one in Italy. It's all in Italian. The only line I can read on it is that this guy who's given a talk, his name is Greg Merritt, and he's from the Cree Corporation, C-R-E-E. Well, you will find the Cree Corporation coming up on every one of these things. Okay? What's happening with this is there's a very aggressive viral marketing campaign going on by the Cree Corporation in order to sell their LED products. As a matter of fact, you've been referred to LED City. Okay? LED City is a website set up by the Cree Corporation. If you go down to the bottom line, you'll see copyright Cree Corporation. Okay? There is a very, very aggressive marketing campaign going on right now by the Cree Corporation in many different arenas in order to sell their product. It sounds like it's highly efficient, but right now the light sources that we're using in the city of Urbana are more energy efficient than the LEDs are. Okay, the LEDs are talked about being highly efficient, but they're really not. In terms of lumens per watt, the most effective manufacturable LEDs right now are in the 60, the most efficient are in the 60 to 70, and that's one LED taken, not put in an array with the 100 other LEDs or however many it takes to create a viable fixture. But that one LED is about 60 to 70 lumens per watt. The induction lamps that are the pedestrian level lamps in Campus Town, those are 71 lumens per watt. The high pressure sodium, or the metal halide that we're using around the city, are about 90 lumens per watt. The high pressure sodiums get up to about 120 to 130 lumens per watt. The most energy efficient LED that's ever been manufactured is about 130, and that is in pristine laboratory conditions where it's just one LED. It's not any kind of a manufactured device. So what I'm saying is be careful what you read, because it's not the whole story. It's not the whole story. I've sat with the people who are inventing these things, who are working with them. I was just at the IESNA conference, Street and Area Lighting Conference, about 6 weeks ago. A presentation done by Mark McClear, who's the Director of Business Development for Cree Inc. Okay? He gave some very interesting information in that, lighting emitting diodes for outdoor and area lighting. He basically said the heat sink is one of the main difficulties. And the life that they talk about, 50,000 hours, that is a calculated life. There's never been a fixture tested to that. They can't test it because they don't know what the fixture is going to look like. There's all kinds of parameters that are varying. So they may say 50,000 hours. They don't know that. Okay, the heat is the problem, and they can't get the heat away from the LED. That's why it's okay in a flashlight. Okay, because it's just a little flashlight that's going to be on for just a few minutes, or the tail light of a car that goes on and off. But when it's used in a lighting application, it's a different story. So I could go on about that for a longer time, but let me just make one more comment on his presentation. He obviously have a great passion for this, okay? He listed a whole bunch of manufacturers that make LED lights. Not one of them is a major U.S. manufacturer. There's only one major manufacturer among all of them, which is Schrade Air, and they don't even make an LED fixture yet. So the only people you can buy these fixtures from are fly-by-night outfits. As a matter of fact, the Taraka article here that we took off the web talks about how Taraka's new lights have been installed by an Italian startup company, Electronica Gelbison, which makes components for cars. Okay, there are no major U.S. manufacturers that make this. Why? Because they know that we're ahead of the curve in terms of the technology. Okay, so there's a bunch of other things that come into the LED situation. The main one is this heat sink. You cannot put an LED replacement lamp in a light fixture. The entire light fixture is going to have to be completely different. It's going to be a whole lot bigger than any light fixtures we see now, because it's got to have a huge heat sink in it, and it's going to have air flowing through it to cool the heat sink. Okay, so what does this mean in terms of where we are with LED? Well, right now, the bottom line is LEDs for street lighting applications are experimental only. Okay, the industry out there are groups that are looking to find people who will buy their fixtures to fund their R&D. That's what's going on in the marketplace. Okay, the question is, do we want to be on the leading edge of technology, like with induction lamps that we have installed in Campus Town on the pedestrian level, and 700 of them in Champaign in the area 4A. We have the largest installation of induction lamps in the country. But that's a leading edge thing. We didn't apply that technology until it had been proven for a long period of time. Or do we want to be what we call on the bleeding edge, which is the people who pay a lot of money and find out that their products don't work after a couple of years, and the companies that they want to go back to are out of business. Okay, so that's the issue. We're in an experimental phase only with LEDs. It's not ready for prime time, and we're in a marketing-driven moment in the history of these. Now, I think that they're going to develop into something. I think they have tremendous applications. Whether they ever make it in street lighting is a big question, because there may be other technologies that overtake them before they can get to the point of real application in street lighting.
Yeah, I do.
Let me just comment on LEED. I think LEED is great. Okay. It's a terrific program. It's fantastic. The thing is that LEED is designed primarily for the inside of buildings. It's not designed for outdoor situations. LEED is how do I control the energy in a building, and it's not a code as Annette was talking about. It's a system of rating a building, and the problem with LEED is, again, this problem of priorities that are in opposition to one another. I have the SS8 credit, the light credit that Annette was referring to, and most of it is great stuff. Minimizing light trespass, glare reduction, it's tremendous goals, okay? Here's the problem with the application. Here's where it says for exterior lighting. Only light areas as required for safety and comfort. That sounds good. The next line, though, says, do not exceed 80% of the lighting power densities for exterior areas as defined in ASHRAE IESNA Standard 90.1. So the problem is, in order to apply LEED, you have to violate ASHRAE and IESNA. It's built right into the language of the standard. So that's a problem. Secondarily, as Annette was saying, there's these different zones for lighting zones, which are good definitions. They're great definitions. However, do they have the application in the campus town area that we're talking about? Because the definition calls for, as she was saying, it may be an LZ3. It may be LZ4. It would have to be worked through. But let's say it's an LZ3. It says that at the illuminance value shall be no greater than 0.2 horizontal and vertical foot candles, which it calls for vertical foot candles, which is good, at the site boundary, and no greater than 0.01 horizontal foot candles 15 feet beyond the site. In other words, 15 feet beyond the edge of whatever you define as the site has to be essentially black. Well, that's good if you're trying to eliminate energy or limit energy use and light trespass. However, what if you have an environment where you have pedestrians walking all the time and you have criminals who are looking for nice dark places to take them to do their nefarious activities? Okay? So this is LEED in this application is inconsistent with our campus environment where we don't want to create dark spots for criminals to do their thing. Okay? So what I'm saying is LEED is terrific, but to me in this case, it would be better to apply the goals of LEED rather than try to use LEED as the criteria. It would be better if we're looking for criteria. For instance, the wording of one of the things that was mentioned talked about the phrase compliant. If we used IESNA for what we were complying to, rather than LEED. Okay, LEED is really made for the insides of buildings. Okay, so there's my opinions. Be happy to answer questions.
Well, in many ways, that was rather fascinating. Overwhelming, I could almost tell you. However, it did make me think about a lot of things. I think that the main reason why we're interested in LEED is an ecological and power-saving cause. Mm-hmm. We know that it has particular uses and has particular characteristics, but its great apparent appeal to people is cost efficiency and economy. And all communities are now trying to focus on those issues. If it turns out that they are truly cost efficient, but we might have to put, 3 more posts on a street to get the luminosity, vertical luminosity, or whatever it is, what I just learned, was one of the aspects of streetlight consideration and construction, then obviously there are ways of solving the problem by designing, more poles or whatever it would be, and there would have to be like a cost determination over the long run of the life of the street. Where did you actually save the money? So a lot of what you said may be true, but might almost be superfluous to the goal of cost efficiency and saving energy in an energy crisis period that I think we might be entering into. So the Energy Conservancy may be the lead, the most important, I'll say, reason to have this conversation, not the design or the aesthetics or other things. Although, of course, in the campus town area, safety is a concern, but safety can be achieved by a variety of means and inventive lighting practices. So just because certain posts or certain available structures today may not be ideal, I feel sure that probably there will be a time when they will be, and maybe it's not going to be in time for this particular project, but I think we still have to talk about this. So now I'm going to ask you, if you're basically suggesting to the city that the kind of lighting that we're curious about isn't ready for prime time on a public street, even though it's great for your home. On the other hand, I'm looking at all of East Urbana that has circular globe lights and spreads light evenly to the skies as well as to the streets. And I was seeing these demonstrations here in the diagrams that, well, one would imagine that it's really great for people and passengers in airplanes riding overhead to see what your town looks like, but it may not be so good for your neighborhood. But again, even that might be misleading, because now I know that the inside of the globe there might be the way the construction is, the way the reflectors are, the way the bulb is engineered. This might be an illusion that it's inefficient. It actually might be extremely efficient, and actually it does give off a lot of nice light. So is there a way to rate and evaluate the efficiency of existing units that people are typically buying in city structures and for city projects, like when you go to Sears and you see all the refrigerators on the line and they're all given a rating for efficiency, compared to output? If we had a way of looking at existing structures, and if we had an efficiency ruler or measurement, we could then say, sure, we'll go for some of these more traditional structures or applications, but we still want to know which are the most efficient. And right now, you've said a lot about, in favor of the standard as is, but I still want to get information about their efficiency, because could be they're all really great lights, but they're darn inefficient as far as costing as far as the light bill of our city. So I don't know. That's my comment. Apparently, we're going to be talking about this, or some decision's going to be made. I don't know about tonight, but that's just my insight.
Well, I agree that energy efficiency is a huge criteria. It's one of the many, but it's very, very important. And personally, my whole goal is to reduce the energy use as much as possible. One of the things that I did in the recent rebuilding of the Northeast Treatment Plant, in the preliminary design phase of that, I worked with the sanitary district to install digester gas generators, and then they ended up shipping all the sludge from the southeast plant or southwest plant to the northeast plant in order to generate more digester gas, and there's large generators in there which use that digester gas to generate the power that the treatment plant uses. Okay, my whole life has been geared towards energy efficiency, and what I'm trying to express in terms of these lights is right now the most energy efficient lamps that are available and will be for the foreseeable future are the ones that you're using right now. Okay, the high pressure sodium are the best. Okay, no doubt about it. And those were used as the standard arterial lamp for quite a long time. And but there are those who don't like the color. Okay, this can be a very emotional discussion. Okay, and people like the white light, and there are some reasons when you get into talking about scotopic and photopic and mesopic lighting levels. In other words, how your eyeball reacts to light. Why the white light is preferred in some ways than the yellow light. However, the metal halide, which is the white light, are almost as efficient. Again, the metric that you're asking for is lumens per watt. Okay, that's the efficiency measurement. Lumens per watt. How much light is put out by that lamp compared to the amount of energy, the watts that go into it. So that's the measurement that is the measurement of efficiency.
I could just jump in for a second.
Yeah.
We did a streetlight master plan back in the mid-'90s, which came up with the whole plan to replace the series lighting, and we still haven't completed the plan per se. But some of the decisions we made were just this debate that Tom is bringing up now. previous city council had the debate, and we decided on white light, metal halide, not high-pressure sodium. So if this council wants to revisit issues like that, we need to know ASAP, because generally the directives I've been giving Tom for this university district lighting is based on many decisions that we made back in the mid-'90s. So I share that, because if we're going to go back and re-debate that, and it can be a very emotional issue, then we're almost like timeout on almost all our lighting systems, and we're going to go back to a whole bunch of decisions that we had made in the past. So we could get off track real easy then.
Well, I don't know if I'm asking for that. I'm just asking for efficiency.
Yeah. So efficiency.
But I'm just saying, that's why, I mean, some decisions we've made, and that's been the directive we've been giving the Tom, and I guess maybe tonight, I guess I need to know, are we going back to square one, or is it just the debate of LEDs, yes or no? And I think we're hearing tonight LEDs right now is no for street lighting. And if the next issue is energy efficiency, need, we will work on that. But that's kind of, I interrupted Tom, I'm sorry.
In terms of what you're asking, okay, let me give you a little list. The incandescent light bulbs that you normally use are about 10 to 15 lumens per watt. Okay, the best LEDs that are manufactured now are in the 50 to 70 range. Okay, they have some experimental that are better than that, but they are a long way from manufactured. The metal halide normal is about 100 lumens per watt. High pressure sodium is between 120 and 130 lumens per watt. Okay, the absolute best experimental LED that they've done is about 130 lumens per watt, and that's in perfect laboratory conditions. So lumens per watt is the metric.
Yeah, there are a couple of issues here, and I guess one of the reasons I brought this up is that I'm interested in effective lighting. Okay, that's the word that I'm interested in.
Good word.
And we know, there's a lot of research that shows that lighting has no real effect on crime, but the perception that people have being safer is very important. And if you're doing commercial lighting, we know it's good for business, get people out on the streets, and of course we want pedestrians to be visible to vehicles at busy locations. So there's no argument there. But why am I changing out all my incandescent light bulbs at home to fluorescents? It's because I'm saving what? My energy costs are 20%, and the light bulb lasts years as opposed to months.
Exactly.
Okay, so you might talk about lumens per watt and whatever, but you have to factor in replacement costs, labor, and all of that. So that's why I brought up the point. If LEDs can be used in a way to get some of our costs down in some of this, we should take advantage of that. Okay,
just as a point.
Let me just. Okay. Yeah. Now you may really like what you did in Campus Town, in the section between 4th and Wright Street.
And what I would say is that
and I don't like it.
Okay.
Okay. Can I please finish talking?
I'm sorry.
We had a demonstration here a couple weeks ago, and it's not that it's bad light. Well, it's not that it's it's great for business. It's very bright. It basically turns night into day, and I would argue that may not be necessarily a good thing health-wise. But the worst part of it is that it's glare in your face, and it's a lot of bright going up. Okay, so if you can just simply get LED certified, LEED certifiable, mostly there, which cuts out the glare coming at me, but still gets you the vertical lighting that you need, and stops the light pollution upward, then I will be very happy. Okay, that's what I'm after, and that's what I define as effective lighting. Yeah. So it's get the costs down, get the replacement costs down, knock out the glare, and get the light out of the sky where it doesn't belong. Okay, those are the things that I'm after. And right now, what I see in Campus Town doesn't meet that, and that's what I want to stop. I don't want to be stuck with something that's going to happen over 10 years that we're going to be stuck with for 50 years that creates basically Memorial Stadium effect for the entire campus area.
I agree with your criteria.
Then why are we looking at a campus town that is so bright and bleeds to the sky?
Okay, and that's an excellent question. I agree entirely with and I'm talking personally now, okay, with the getting the cost down, getting the replacement cost down, reducing the glare, and cutting down uplight. I agree with those criteria completely. What was designed in Campus Town was the result of months and months and months of many people working together on that whole list of criteria to balance all those criteria out and figure out what was best for their environment, and that was the design that resulted from that. Now, having said that, perhaps some of the areas, these 4 areas, were bent a little bit further away from the minimal than some people would like. However, there are compromises that have to be made and that were made. However, let me also say that getting the cost down, okay, in terms of the energy cost, what we used on the upper lights were our high-pressure sodium. They are the most efficient light bulbs that have been ever produced and will probably go on being efficient. They're going to increase in efficiency through time, as well as LEDs and everything else. So they are the most efficient that could be used. The induction lamps that are lower are pretty efficient, but they give the perfect color and perfect color rendition for the pedestrian environment. Plus, those light bulbs have a 20-year life. Okay, they're the longest light bulbs in terms of the replacement, the replacement time interval. So some of the things that we're talking about were taken into account there.
So basically, it's the design of a bulb that bleeds all over the place at the top. That's probably the biggest culprit. That's what you're saying.
The induction lamp does put light out in every direction. Now,
what about the street lights at the top?
The street lights at the top throw all the light down. Okay, those are cut-off optic fixtures. Okay, they throw all the light down. Okay, now, the lower ones have a glow top in them, and the purpose of that is to let a little bit of light come up to light the building facades, because that is what gives the sense of place.
Sure.
So there's a small percentage of light that does go up upward. That's part of the design because of the desire for vertical illumination.
But it still looks like the stadium.
I can understand that certain people would make that assessment. I'm not arguing with the assessment. It's just that people see things different ways.
Well, the problem is when you fly over it, it's bleeding all over the sky. I mean,
well, Champaign-Urbana certainly is. I mean, there's a lot of light going up. We can't deny that. But that particular installation.
Yeah, and yet I've been in places in California where they have, Carmel by the Sea or Monterey and so on, where the lighting's great. You can see the night sky, and there's not a crime problem. There's not a business problem. I mean, I was strolling in Monterey, and the place was packed.
Yeah. Well, they have some amenities that we don't have in Central Illinois.
Sure. Okay. But yeah.
It's just the fact.
Carmel by the Sea.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. You're by the sea. But my point is that they have effective lighting. Yes. That doesn't bleed all over the sky.
By the criteria that they have assembled to design their lighting there, I agree, and it may be closer to what you would like to see here, but all those criteria need to be taken into account. And let me share the last area in terms of out of the sky and glare. The upper light fixtures on Campus Town are cut-off light fixtures. The arc tube of that lamp is up inside the reflector, and all that light goes down. Those are minimal glare fixtures. Yes, the lower ones have a little bit more of an appearance of light, but the only way that you can eliminate glare in any lighting application is to turn the light fixture off. Okay? Every light fixture has glare, and so it's a matter of how much. And so we did take that into account, and with the rest of the criteria, minimize the glare as much as we could.
Thank you, Heather. Well, I've learned more about streetlights than I ever thought I would learn in my lifetime, and I do appreciate actually the work of Gary and Annette and Charlie and the consultant who have been working on lights for as long as you have. I think I'm going to say something I've said before, and actually I will plan on bringing a motion, not now because of the lateness, but in the future. I think that this is the cart before the horse again. We should set what our energy goals are for the city, and then we should ask our staff, based on all the projects that are about to happen, including streetlight projects and other kinds of things, what is the best route for us to meet those particular goals? And so that, and then we can look and see where best can we apply limited funds to actually achieve energy efficiency. So I understand that in part this was driven from an aesthetics about and a concern about glare in Campus Town, and I also know it's driven by the fact that there's about to be a lighting project, and I appreciate that urgency. I also think that when it comes to limited public dollars and the goal of energy efficiency, which is important not only from a cost standpoint but from an environmental standpoint, I think that as a council we need to decide what is our goal, and then work with our staff to figure out how to achieve that goal. And that I see as under the umbrella that we've spoken of in the past and Brandon brought forward of the Sustainable Urbana Initiative. So that's kind of the direction in which I'd like to see this coming. And I can't yet actually evaluate this in some ways without that bigger picture, because if you say we should spend X number of millions of dollars over X number of years now, I am not comparing that to any other potential project that could achieve similar results in terms of cost savings and energy efficiency. So that's what I would like to see. I do love the Wuna lights, the globe fixtures. I always have, and I was there on campus when the student was hit by the bus on Armory and Goodwin, and at the time it felt like that was not enough light. And I in many ways appreciate being a woman who likes to walk at 2 o'clock in the morning by myself, to have sufficient light for me to feel secure. Even if it doesn't make me actually safer, I preserve my freedom that way. So I do have some concerns about what's being balanced here, but ultimately I agree with the spirit of this, especially the energy efficient argument.
Lynn?
Two things very quickly. I think Danielle, to kind of talk to your point. I think we can't just look at it in terms of our one goal of sustainable Urbana. We have two other goals that are ranked very high, and that's economic development and public safety. So I think effective lighting is key. I think that's what you're saying, but I just don't want us to just think we're going to move forward with a goal that's only all about energy savings. I mean, we have to balance all three, and in that context, use our public dollars the best that we can. Given the hour, I'm wondering if we have one guest here who is going to speak to one of our items, and I'd like to see if we couldn't wrap up this discussion in some appropriate way so that we could move on with our agenda.
Charlie?
Yeah, just at the very end, I revised the document that I sent around, and I emailed it to you so that the links would be live. And at the very end, I suggest, there's a motion for discussion here that I think goes a lot of the way that brings staff in appropriately, that lets us add aspects of LEED and energy efficiency to our Sustainable Urbana goals, and includes the word effective in terms of developing ordinance and stuff. And I've gotten great feedback from Libby on this, and I'm hoping to meet with Bill and Libby to work through some aspects of this. So if you like the language of this motion at the end or have some suggestions to it, Danielle obviously has some ideas. Maybe she and I can, if everybody could provide me some input for what you'd like to see, we can develop something working with staff that everybody can live with, but becomes part of our Sustainable Urbana approach.
Bring that back.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Dennis?
Okay, and I'd like to really compliment everybody who's brought very important information. You wouldn't know that so much hung upon the decision to make, what kind of streetlights you're going to have next. But, I mean, we have all kinds of, we have the full range of concerns from public safety to viability, economic stability, economic development on one hand, and economic savings on the other. And I really appreciate Charlie's being willing to forego trying to make a decision back in December so that we could have a more fuller and complete understanding and dialogue today. So I really appreciate the fact you waited a little bit and brought it back to us so we could really absorb it better.
Well, it's more just that we understand the urgency. We're going into a 10-year project that we're going to have to live with for 50 years, and just want people to walk into it knowing that you know, if we create something that looks like Memorial Stadium bleeding into the sky, it's going to be with us for 50 years.
Okay. There's been over an hour and a half on this subject, I believe, and so thank you, Tom, for...
I apologize for going so
don't
long.
apologize. You gave us very important information, and I appreciate that, so don't apologize at all. There's not a motion on the table that I'm... Okay, so that's what I thought. So moving on, and thanks, everybody, for your time and thoughtfulness on this discussion. We are going to move what was number 9 up to... right now, it's a discussion, a budget amendment, increase suggestion for Economic Development Corporation, ordinance number 2008-01-002, an ordinance revising the annual budget ordinance. And Lynn and, go ahead.
Yeah, if I could, I just wanted to abstain due to any perceived conflict of interest, so I won't be part of the discussion or the vote on this topic, but
Okay.
thank you.
And Danielle, you?
Heather, it's the same.
That's what
I'm
thought.
going to abstain too for a potential conflict
You guys
of
get
interest.
your rear ends out of here.
Sure.
I'm just kidding.
Address this briefly, and then I'll
Yes,
turn it over to
Lynn,
Craig.
your last name is on here
Okay.
along with the mayor and finance.
This particular ordinance has to do with increasing our funding to the Economic Development Corporation up by $9,434. That increase would take us to a per capita amount of $1, which is the typical that the EDC suggests, and in fact, several other communities are giving in that manner to this cause, and Champaign is giving it a higher level. I'm your representative to the EDC, and Danielle served in that role. The EDC is working right now on developing a strategic plan, and throughout that process and under Craig's leadership as the current chairman, as well as the interim executive for the EDC, we have developed a strategic plan which we think that we'll be able to bring back to you as a council periodically and be able to show you more concrete evidence of the work of the EDC. The EDC is clearly different than the Urbana Business Association. I've kind of learned that. The EDC is kind of the point person, the point group for when companies call and want to know how they can get connected to properties here in the Champaign County area. And many communities like us have EDCs, Peoria, Bloomington, so it's very typical way of going about business and providing that point person, because companies do not want to work with a bunch of different entities. They want one single group. So with a bit of introduction, I'd like to ask Craig to just talk a little bit about the EDC and our strategic goals. Craig.
Thanks, Lynn. I won't go over the points that Lynn has made, but I will reinforce a couple of those. I've been doing economic development over in Champaign for 20 years. I've also been working with the city of Urbana for those 20 years. I think there's a long history of the two communities working together and being connected by some economic development force and organization throughout that period of time. It has varied in its structure, but it's very important for a number of reasons. Some of those have become givens in the economic development climate or world, if you will. When the site, it used to be that companies did a lot of their site search work independently, and they do most of it through large site consultants now. There's a half a dozen of the big ones in the country, and they typically do the big projects, and they look for very specific things. One of those is organization. They want the communities to be organized. They don't want to go talk to Urbana, to Champaign, to Savoy, to the University of Illinois. They want a center point for economic development, and we provide that through the EDC. It's one of the reasons why Champaign has funded it all these years at such a high level,
is because we have that common voice or single contact point. In addition to that, the site search companies come to us and seek very quickly enough information to begin the process of searching for a site location for a large employer, usually, or manufacturing firm, whatever that site location process is. And we need an organization that can gather that information and represent the entire region when they talk to the site consultants. It's very important to be able to do that. Our goal in this is to keep in the game or to make those early cuts. Those companies look at a number of states and a number of destinations, and they start cutting. And one of our goals is always to stay in the hunt or the project long enough to keep making those cuts, because ultimately you can't be selected as a destination the way Newell did when they located here in this community unless you stay in the process. And the best way to stay in it is to have an organized system for staying in. I've given you a number of materials here to consider. I believe that the Economic Development Corporation, which is part of the Alliance, and there may be some changes in that structure, but there won't be a change in the Economic Development Corporation itself. Champaign and I think Urbana are committed to making sure that that organization continues to be successful. This is the first time that it's been chaired by a public sector chairperson. I'm the current chair. Lynn is the incoming chair. It's always been a private sector chair in the past. And one of the things that we hope to accomplish during this period of time is to get the organization closely aligned with the interests of the communities. I believe it shows a trust level. Our membership is a mixture of private and public funding and private and public board membership. And I believe there's a trust now between the public and private sector that there didn't used to be. I'm encouraged by that. I think the chairs serving from the public sector is an indicator of that. The board has also taken on the effort of developing a strategic plan, and I've only given you 7, I believe, pages out of that plan, which is some 37 pages long. We have to thank Carl for lending us their professional to help us work through this. It's the shortest process I've seen in the area in a long time, and I think we've really quickly focused in. That first page on the document that I handed out illuminates the 6 EDC principal goals that we've articulated are key to advancing economic development and growing the communities. The first 3 of those are somewhat internal to the organization. They have to do with how we serve our constituent groups, making sure that the companies that are here now grow and prosper in the community, and marketing our community, our county, in this case the region. And the second 3 of those are critical, I believe, to our future success. And someone has to help coordinate an effort to look at those 3 and push for change if it's needed, or coordination and funding for some of those. We can't succeed without retaining high-quality education, without improving the service provided at Willard Airport, and without having competitive utilities. The last large project search we had ended when the company made a choice of going to another location because of more competitive utility environment. We have to be aware of that. That's the arena we're working in. That's something that's not entirely under our control, but the utilities sit on our board. It's one of those areas where we can make real progress if we continue to work together. So I won't belabor this, but I believe that several years back the city of Urbana reduced its level of funding. There were some disagreements about things that were being done at the Economic Development Corporation. I think that we should be viewed as earning the trust and holding up our end of Economic Development Corporation, and we have, I believe, a strategic planning process identified here that's going to get us there. The subsequent pages after the first one show how we're going to start filling out those goals with action steps, and ultimately the staff of the Economic Development Corporation will have a work plan that further fills out those goals and objectives so that we are actually putting our money where our mouth is on these 6 strategic goals. if we can accomplish that, and I hope that I or Lynn or someone is talking to you in 6 months and saying we are accomplishing those things, I think we'll be successful.
Thank you, Craig.
Thanks, Craig. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, Craig, thanks. A quick question here. Could you please send me the full version of this via email?
Yes, I'll email it to all of you.
Yeah, it'd be
We've
great. Just
given its size. I didn't want to bring it.
All, that's all I need is the electronic version.
I'll do that in the morning.
It'd be a great reference. And in there, is there more discussion on transportation in general?
Somewhat. This is this is the most specific part of what we've done to date.
Okay.
This is a work in progress.
Yeah.
The board turned this loose now and said, okay, do something with this. And what we did at the last board meeting was we're setting up 6 committees with both board members and community members on them, of 6 to 10 individuals.
I'm sort of interested in where high-speed rail might fit in all this.
Well, transportation is very important to us, but I don't know that high-speed rail fits into these 6. I think rail transportation is another large concern we have right now, but it's not specifically included in any of these 6.
Okay. Well, I'd like to make a motion, but I'll make a statement first. I sort of feel like if we want to be treated equally, and it's a perception thing, then we need to contribute our fair share. So I'd move to send this to council with the recommendation for approval.
Second? Can I second it?
I'll second it if you don't.
Okay.
It's fine.
Go ahead, Mayor.
Lynn came and talked to me about this some time ago in the context that she's going to be the new chair, and I agree with her that Urbana should pay its fair share. We do have a concern, which is how do you actually measure the effectiveness of the EDC, and we discussed this. We met together with Craig and Lynn and Mayor Schweihart and Tom Carino about developing some kind of measures, which is going to take some time, but the organization is in the process of finding a new director, and I think it's important that Urbana contribute, as I said, our fair share. But I do think that we need to have periodic evaluation of, is our money creating the best return that we can? Because when this money was cut, it was diverted to the UVA and to our internal staff. So I would like to see the motion include something about developing measures and having a periodic evaluation of whether we're achieving an effective use of our money.
Craig, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to respond to the measures comment, if I could, for just a second. It's probably the most challenging aspect of economic development that there is, because you can go through a dry spell of 3 years and not land a large project, and people say, well, what are you doing? Well, you may have come in second on all of those. It may be a slow economy like the one we're experiencing now, any number of things. But I believe that the mayor is absolutely on point. You have to find ways to measure the success. Several of those that we have to keep going on, whether there are big projects coming in or not, are retention visits. If we're not visiting our existing companies and telling them we care about them and finding out what's important to them, we're not succeeding. 70-some% of our growth comes out of existing companies. It doesn't come from the home run you occasionally hit with a new firm coming in. It comes in our development relations with our developers. We have several, Tapman, Atkins, that are common to both communities that have built a number of large projects in the communities, and they're crucial to our success. They sit on our boards and they participate. Those kind of things we can't lose sight of, and I think, over the next 6 months as we put this together, we'll work on some of those physical measures to be able to come back and show you. They should be economic increases in the community. They should be projects. They should be the retention calls. Those kinds of things should be clearly articulated. If we set it up so the only thing we call a success is the home run, and we don't have any, then we're failing. And I think that we can do better than that. I agree we haven't done as well as we can, and we should be able to set what those measures will be in advance, and then come back and say, here's how we're succeeding at this. If you look at the bottom line in both communities, we are succeeding, but I don't think we've very well figured out how to come back and make a cause and effect relationship between the things we're doing the progress that we've seen. And we should do better at that.
Thanks, Greg. Charlie, did you? I thought I saw your hand up earlier. Okay. Dennis?
Well, I think that certainly the city needs to participate in this program, and it's part of the balance of our character to show that we're as interested in economic development and supporting it financially as any other community in our area. I also have great faith now and interest in the new energy that I see in the Urbana Business Association. So I wouldn't want to be defunding them funding this at the expense of this new, I think, energy that's about to be shown. So, I think that the great test will be to see whether it's possible to bring encouraged development in this town. I know this is a three-city joint effort. We are sitting next, or at least Champaign and Urbana, and Champaign has got a pretty strong record so far. I would almost suggest that it's not as needful of his attention, but I think we'll have to wait and see. I guess we'll have to try this for a while.
Two comments.
Lynn, go ahead.
Number one, Craig and I and the executive committee we've invited Susan Tolson, who is our UBA executive director, to attend all of our executive board meetings, or all of our board meetings, as an invited guest. And so if Champaign has a similar person in a role, that person will be invited too. And so that is a positive, because the EDC, again, is different than the UBA. You know, and the CBA, or, you know, they provide different functions, but we do want to tie them more closely together and think that that's valuable. And then, I was just going to let you know that it's the actual EDC. It comprises of all the communities in Champaign County, so it includes Rantoul, Tolono, you know, so all of the communities.
It's much larger than.
Right.
Okay. Right. That's good to know.
Yeah, and so the EDC works in a way that any project that lands in Champaign County is good for the whole county.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so if it lands in St. Joe, great. You know, they'll trickle over here and go to Menards and Meyer. You know what I mean?
I got you. I got the picture.
Okay.
They're excellent. Okay.
Right.
That's
okay.
very nice.
So, but I mean, we're fine to entertain an amendment to the motion if you prefer it, that we come back each 6 months with, you know, or 12 months, whatever you'd like, in terms of, and address and keep you up to date in terms of our objectives and our goals.
I'd welcome whatever language you folks could come up with.
Champaign requires an annual report back from the EDC, and if that was timed with the report to Urbana, then that would make sense. So we
could do it more often, but in the motion, we could put annually, and then obviously we'd be happy to do it more often.
I'll move that we use an annual report.
And I would second that.
I'll accept that as a friendly amendment.
Perfect.
Okay. We have a motion by Charlie, and I had seconded it, but since I'm the chair, I'm going to give that second to Dennis. Is there any more discussion on this? Okay, so the motion is to send this to council with a recommendation for approval. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'd like to move that we extend our meeting for another 15 minutes. So we have two things left, right?
Yes.
Thank you, Craig.
Thank you, Craig, for your time. Thanks for waiting. You can go home.
I learned a lot.
Learned a lot about lights tonight.
No,
Yeah.
You would.
So I move we extend this for 15 minutes so we can get the other three items off the agenda here. Kurt's been waiting patiently, and
Second.
Everyone's reluctant to
Reluctantly.
to second it. Okay, Kurt.
We need to vote.
I thought we did. Yeah, we did. All those in favor?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, on that, I'm sorry.
oh, yeah.
I'm thinking, okay.
Yeah, we're
All those in favor of
Aye.
extending for 15 minutes?
Aye.
Opposed? Just kidding. Anyway, let's go. Now we have ordinance number 2008-01003. Kurt.
This is a,
Oh, wait, no, we don't.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
Let's
we're
do it.
good.
Let's just do
Yeah,
it.
that's
This is the
good.
fireworks, is that you're addressing, okay.
fireworks, exactly.
Different 04, not 03.
This is the result of a joint effort by the police and fire departments to strengthen the city code with regard to fireworks. And the version that you have before you has the support of both the police department and the fire department. The proposed ordinance makes several changes to the city code. First of all, it revises the code to coincide with some changes in insurance and some other requirements for pyrotechnic operators that the General Assembly enacted in the state law in 2006. So it just brings it up to the state law requirements. Second significant thing about this ordinance is that it prohibits the sale and use of sparklers on public property. A couple of the other changes in this ordinance, there's actually two places in the city code that deal with fireworks. It's Chapter 5 and Chapter 15. And this ordinance makes both chapters coincide so that they're both consistent. And a couple of the changes, one of them is under the fire protection, the fire prevention code, it increases the maximum fine for fireworks violations from $500 to $750. And again, that just makes it consistent with Section 15 that has a $750 fine. And finally, it also amends the fire prevention code definition of fireworks so that both chapters 5 and 15 will have the same definition of fireworks so that there's no inconsistency there at all.
I'd like to recommend we approve this. We send it to council with a motion for approval.
It's been motioned by Lynn and seconded by Danielle. Is there any discussion? Charlie?
Question. Could somebody please define deflagration for me, which is in section F 3301.3? I have no idea what that word means.
There's something.
By combustion, explosion, deflagration, or detonation. So I assume it means something that has to do with explosions, but, okay.
Like melting?
Yeah, my laptop's out of power.
It's been a long
okay.
night.
Okay. So you're basically telling me cap guns are out? No. They're in. It says, which and shall include blank cartridges, toy pistols, toy guns in which explosives are used. Oh, they are? Oh, okay.
Right.
You must like
Based-
those. They're kind of fun.
Based on
likes those.
the amount of explosive mixture.
Favorite toy, yeah.
Cap guns are okay.
Ron?
Deflagration, the action of heating a substance until it burns away rapidly.
So what about those little poppers that you have at kids' parties that you pull the strings and they make some kind of noise?
Those would be permitted.
Okay.
The party favors will be permitted. The one thing that won't be permitted on public property will be sale and use of sparklers, and that's because of the safety concerns.
So I won't see any more of
No.
the little kids waving sparklers at the parade.
In their backyards, that's okay.
But at the parade, let's see. Dennis, go ahead.
That's the point I wanted to clarify. This is a prohibition of sparkler use on public land, i.e. the street or in a public park. But if you're at home in your front yard, not a problem. You can still have fun with sparklers on 4th of July.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But it's not recommended.
Can you throw them in the air?
I have to throw that in there on behalf of our Chief
It's not
Dilly.
recommended, but
life would be very boring if
that's
you did
right.
everything that wasn't,
There's always a risk to being alive, and we are dying daily. So let's just have fun.
I
Okay.
second that, if I'm allowed to.
Okay, we have a motion by Lynn, a second by Danielle, and discussion is over. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Last but not, we got two more items, and one is the traffic code. Ordinance number 2008-01-003, an ordinance amending Schedule J of Section 23-183 of the Urbana Local Traffic Code prohibiting parking at all times on certain streets. This is Prairie Winds Drive.
I move we forward this to council with a
Second.
recommendation for approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
All those in favor?
We have a motion by
Go
Lynn,
ahead.
a second by Charlie. Is there any discussion?
No.
No. The motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Yay. Opposed? The motion carries. Last but not least, a discussion, Urbana's 175th birthday celebration. We have moved this agenda around so much, you're going to have to watch the tape really carefully. Go ahead. This is Dennis and the mayor.
Is there a resolution?
Just to sum it up, we have a committee that's been meeting, and we're planning events, and the first event is February 17th, and we have a theme for every month, and we are going to have fun, and we will give you the details.
Okay.
Is that good enough?
Perfect. That's
No,
perfect.
no.
No,
It's not, okay, all right, first of all, if I could have the floor, all right.
Dennis, go ahead.
All right, okay, really, I'd like to probably put this back on the agenda for the next meeting because
Okay.
I think it's significant enough and it's important enough not to just throw it away at the last 5 seconds of our meeting here. So anyways, yes, we are celebrating the 175th birthday of the founding of Urbana, and we will have wonderful program coming up, and details will be forthcoming, and we will bring this up again at our next meeting
With details.
with details.
And fireworks?
Perhaps. No, it's public space. We can't have fireworks here, I'm sorry.
Okay. We don't have council next week. The
We
20, no, we don't. It's Martin Luther
We have it on Tuesday.
Tuesday. Okay. So we will see these things that have been forwarded next week.
And
a week.
Danielle will be conducting the meeting because I'll be out of town.
Okay. So any questions, direct them to Danielle. We'll see everyone a week from tomorrow. And you know that there's no further business. This meeting stands adjourned.